Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. The Sword Emperor died in battle with the heavenly demon, but instead of dying, he opened his eyes in the body of Leonard Cardenas. He found himself in the greatest swordsman clan on the continent. His new body was weak and worthless. Leonard was despised by everyone. The Cardenas clan tournament was underway, and Leonard was scheduled to participate in it. Everyone expected him to disgrace himself again and lose. But behind this weakling lurked the greatest swordsman of all time. The protagonist faced the strongest of the cadets, who merely smirked and was confident of victory. But the protagonist knew how to exploit this weak body. He recalled all his techniques and skills from his past life. The enemy lunged at him, but Leonard dodged with a single movement. He struck, and the crowd fell silent, because this weak guy had just won. Elsewhere, word spreads through the Cardenas training grounds that the 3 injured trainees may be ruined for field training. Their faction gathers indoors, tense and unsettled by the incident. They try to reassure themselves that losing some combat power will not matter much, and that field training should still be manageable. Then someone reveals the real problem. The one who defeated all 3 did it alone, and it was number 381. The report emphasizes how quickly the fight ended, making his strength impossible to dismiss. Their leader asks exactly which rank students were beaten. When he hears the victims were numbers 329, 257, and 133, the room realizes 381 took down opponents ranked far above him. That result shocks them, because it means 381's ability is much greater than anyone expected. They immediately grasp the political danger. If someone that capable joins another faction, the balance of power will shift. The leader's expression hardens as he decides to act before that happens. At the same time, the blonde boy demonstrates a crackling blue power and contemptuously rejects the idea that he should be judged by rank alone. The faction leader orders his men to bring number 381 to him so he can assess him personally. Watching with interest, he decides that if 381 is truly useful, he will claim him. In his recovered memories, Ren recalls being told a final lesson meant for the afterlife. That lesson was that Ren's previous life failed because he never built the proper foundation for his power when he was young. The warning returns with painful clarity as his former self lies battered and forced to face that mistake. He understands that with the right foundation, his fate might have been different. Back in the present, he begins correcting that flaw by cultivating internal arts from childhood instead of too late. He focuses on laying a solid base now, while his body is still young enough to adapt. His first goal is to forge a constitution capable of handling mana. Blue energy swirls around him as he channels mana through his body and starts rebuilding himself from the inside. When the circulation stabilizes, he confirms that the attempt has succeeded. Even so, he recognizes that a child's body still lacks the internal power he once possessed, leaving questions about the Cardenas bloodline. That uncertainty turns his attention to the family itself, and what inherited trait might shape his growth. Later, life returns to routine as trainees gather in the dining hall for a meal. He tastes the food and finds it surprisingly agreeable. While eating, he reminds himself that a balanced diet matters if he wants his body to grow properly without skipping meals. His quiet meal is interrupted when a much larger student from number 7 looms over him, signaling a new confrontation. A higher-ranked trainee confronts the blonde boy about yesterday's fight and immediately notes that his behavior seems more aggressive than expected. He also notices the boy is eating far more than usual, treating it as another sign that something about him has changed. The boy confirms the man's rank has changed, recognizing him as someone who recently rose to number 7. The man proudly explains he seized that position by defeating the previous holder in a duel, revealing how advancement works among the upper ranks. Rather than be impressed, the boy cuts to the real issue and asks what the man actually wants from him. The man admits he came because he has information he thinks the boy will value. He reveals that the top-ranked trainees, especially numbers 1, 2, and 4, are trying to draw the boy into their sphere of influence. The boy braces himself against the table, taking the warning seriously. He shows he already understands who they mean, identifying them by their distinctive appearances and the Cardenas name. The man lowers his voice, worried that speaking too openly about them will attract dangerous attention. The boy dismisses the man's nerves and demands the point, while the man starts wondering if the boy has become reckless or unstable. The tension tightens as the man struggles to contain his anxiety. He insists the expansion of the Cardenas faction is real and warns that unless the boy joins someone's side, he may not survive what is coming. He presses the idea that neutrality is impossible here and that refusing protection will only leave the boy exposed. The boy flatly rejects the entire premise, declaring that he will not belong to anyone. Even as he walks away, he acknowledges the warning was useful and says he owes the man for the information. Left behind, the man is baffled, convinced this response does not match the timid number 381 he thought he knew. Elsewhere, a red jeweled emblem hints at the larger power structure watching over these trainees. The boy leaves the building at sunset, moving into the open grounds while shadowy figures remain behind him. Outside, he calmly asks if the people following him have business with him. One of the pursuers answers with false politeness, confirming they came specifically for number 381. 2 men approach and frame the encounter as a private conversation they would rather settle before it becomes public. They announce that Lord Number 1 has summoned him, making clear this is not a request between equals. They explain that ever since he defeated Number 7, the upper ranks have taken an interest in him, and the boy realizes the struggle around him is escalating faster than expected. The lead enforcer belittles the conflict as childish while implying that the politics behind it are far more serious. The boy refuses the summons outright and tells them to leave. The enforcer immediately abandons diplomacy and attacks, deciding force will be easier than persuasion. The boy remains centered as the assault rushes in around him. He slips under the strike at the last instant, avoiding the blow cleanly. His attacker is startled by the speed, recognizing that the boy's physical ability is far beyond what someone his age should possess. The boy counters barehanded with explosive force, turning defense into a direct threat. The enforcer is shaken that the boy can pressure him without even drawing a weapon. The exchange sends the attacker reeling and his wooden sword flying, proving the gap is already wider than expected. The boy drives through the opening and batters him again before he can recover. As a rank badge marked 157 spins away, it becomes clear the supposedly superior trainee has been overwhelmed despite his status. The second pursuer hesitates as his ally crashes down, while the boy stands ready and inwardly connects this level of talent to the Cardenas bloodline. Seeing the hesitation, the boy asks whether the remaining opponent still intends to fight despite already understanding he cannot win. The second man raises his weapon anyway, trying to answer fear with bravado. His badge reveals him as number 98, and he insists his rank proves he is stronger. The boy accepts that answer and vanishes from the man's sight. He appears behind him in the same instant and strikes, ending the contest as decisively as he promised. The impact echoes against the academy walls, drawing attention from above. The number 98 badge is blasted loose, symbolizing another effortless defeat. From a high window, an unseen observer concludes that the boy was merely toying with them. A masked watcher in blue is unsettled, wondering whether the boy had been concealing his true strength until now. The boy's composure makes that explanation feel too obvious, suggesting there is still something hidden about him. When their eyes seem to meet across the distance, the watcher is alarmed that the boy may have sensed his gaze. Another blue-robed observer, identified as an overseer of the Fugurov trainees, dismisses the concern and urges him not to create another incident. Meanwhile, the boy is already being evaluated on paper, with someone remarking that great things are expected from number 381. As he walks away from the fallen men, the boy senses that events around him are accelerating into something much larger. An urgent report warns that number 98 is heading for the training grounds, forcing the pursuit to shift there. While one trainee rushes after number 98, another realizes he has no time to waste if he wants to catch him. A blonde woman questions why number 1 specifically ordered number 98 to be brought in. She identifies herself as number 2, Verita Cardenas, and accepts that the strange order must be real. The chase leads out into the training grounds where the confrontation is about to unfold. Verita notes that losing one of number 1's direct subordinates would be serious, since those people are all highly ranked. Before anyone can settle the situation, a trainee is suddenly blasted away. Verita effortlessly knocks him down, asserting control over the field. Number 98 refuses to submit, and instead tells the others to stop groveling and join forces against her. He openly rejects surrender, and Verita realizes his defiance remains intact despite the gap in strength. Number 98 counters sharply and sends number 25 reeling. In the exchange, number 98 tears away number 25's rank badge. He claims the badge for himself, turning the fight into an opportunity. Verita immediately acknowledges the result and declares him promoted to number 25. Approaching him amid the fallen trainees, she asks whether he understands what just happened. He answers that he does, showing he can already perceive the truth for himself. Verita recognizes that his body and energy flow are unusual enough to reveal a rare gift. She points out that even the number in his hand confirms the change in rank. By testing his reaction, she identifies his ability as a form of clairvoyant perception. She explains that this mind's eye lets him read inner states and exploit stronger opponents' weaknesses, making it a talent worthy of number 2. Seeing his value, Verita asks why he resists forming a group when he cannot handle the next day's training alone. Their conversation is cut off when number 1 arrives and orders them to stop discussing sensitive matters openly. Number 1, William Cardenas, steps in and rebukes them for talking so freely about confidential information. His presence alone terrifies the wounded trainee on the ground. William coldly makes clear that he only came because the disturbance had become too troublesome to ignore. Number 98 studies him and realizes why the famous number 1 commands such overwhelming presence. William approaches, curious about what kind of person number 98 really is. The two finally meet face to face, and number 98 openly acknowledges him as number 1. Even after everything, number 98 offers to keep fighting if William wants to test him. William answers with contempt, making it clear number 98 is speaking far above his station. Verita bursts into laughter at the sheer audacity of someone addressing number 1 that way. Amused rather than offended, she admits this is the first time she has seen anyone treat William so casually. As the tension eases, Verita tells number 98 to stop wasting time and join tomorrow's training, while he agrees and says he only wanted to understand what kind of place this is. William warns the newly promoted number 25 not to regret provoking him. Number 98 accepts the warning without backing down. It is then revealed that the coming exercise is a secret test known only to direct line descendants, where trainees must take initiative and build their own factions. The next day begins with the announcement of the joint training exercise. In the forest, a cloaked senior instructor asks whether all trainees have assembled. An attendant confirms they have, but reports that one unusual trainee appeared while the squads were being formed. The subordinate stands at attention, preparing to explain the irregularity. Senior instructor Bruno orders a full report. He is told that the odd trainee has been practicing alone despite the exercise being designed around group formation, and Bruno checks whether the rules were properly explained. The subordinate confirms that the trainees were informed this field exercise would take place in the Great Forest of Cardenas. He adds that they were told to secure shelter, food, and hunting on their own and to remain within the designated area, which naturally led most of them to form factions under the top-ranked heirs. The largest faction is introduced as Squad A, led by Number 1, William. Another major faction forms around Number 2, Verita. Squad C is led by Number 3 and consists of trainees outside the direct bloodline. Squad D is led by Number 4 and is built around strategy. A final group, Squad E, is listed under Number 483 and consists of those who failed to join any faction. The report moves to the last case, setting up the reveal of the most unusual trainee. The story introduces Leonard Cardenas, trainee number 25. He enters the exercise alone as the sole member of Squad F, carrying only basic supplies and his badge. Seeing how vast the training grounds are, Leonard immediately starts assessing the challenge ahead. An instructor confirms that trainee 25 is Leonard and notes that reaching the designated area through this forest will not be easy. The instructor points out Leonard's meager provisions, while Leonard accepts the situation and reflects that the trial's real purpose is to test self-sufficiency and survival. He realizes the exercise is essentially a competition to steal badges from other trainees. Before anything else can happen, someone approaches through the forest. A senior trainee named Dylan Cardenas intercepts Leonard and blocks his path, saying there are many ways into the forest and trying to start a conversation. Dylan, number 4, reveals himself as another member of the Cardenas family and asks whether Leonard plans to join his squad. Leonard shuts him down at once, treating the offer as suspicious and refusing to discuss his plans. The danger around them is real enough that even the remains of monsters lie nearby, underscoring the risk of the trial. Dylan argues that Leonard is outmatched because the other trainees all have larger groups, and he presents joining him as a practical deal. Leonard refuses without bothering to justify himself, making clear that he simply has no intention of following Dylan's lead. Dylan takes the rejection personally and warns Leonard that defying him will become a mistake. He drops the pretense of persuasion and decides to force Leonard into submission, claiming it will also help his own training. Dylan makes the first move and rushes in. He attacks while still pressing Leonard to join his squad, trying to overwhelm him before he can respond. The strike comes fast and direct, but Leonard slips past it so cleanly that Dylan is left off balance and stunned that his attack missed. Leonard plants himself for a counter. Reading Dylan's movement as unusual footwork, Leonard turns the opening into a precise close-range response. His counter lands hard enough to blast Dylan away in a single exchange. The watching instructor is startled that Leonard can strike with such efficiency and no wasted hostility, as if he already possesses the instincts of an assassin. Dylan crashes to the ground while Leonard remains standing, having decisively won the clash. Before Leonard can press the advantage, the instructor stops him with a hand on his shoulder. The instructor praises Leonard's skill but rules that defeating another trainee in a real match would not automatically earn promotion, then grants him permission to leave for now. Leonard accepts the order without protest. As Leonard departs, he senses just how overwhelming the senior instructor's presence is and realizes the man is far stronger than he appears. Even while moving on, Leonard understands that his own strongest techniques would still be useless against that level of power. The instructor privately judges Leonard to be exactly what one would expect from the continent's greatest sword family, with exceptional talent awakened at a very young age. Thinking of Dylan as well, he concludes that the repeated emergence of prodigies suggests something unusual in the Cardenas bloodline. That thought lingers as he turns from the encounter and resumes his duty. The scene shifts from Leonard's skirmish back to the broader progress of the exercise. Leonard focuses on survival and movement, quickly heading for what he identifies as his first advantageous hiding place. Elsewhere, the senior instructor gathers reports from subordinates and orders them to summarize how the situation developed after the start. One subordinate reports that conflict broke out unusually early in this round. He explains that Group A launched a surprise attack on Group C, apparently after tracking them down first. The ambush unfolded with speed and confusion, but another trainee from Group C escaped the trap, and the rest of Group A was wiped out despite having the numerical edge. The instructor notes that the attacker had seemed clever enough to choose a surprise strike, and the subordinate agrees that the results should have favored them on paper. The instructor concludes that the outcome was not decided by raw military strength alone. The report clarifies that Group C had already been using the terrain and the training grounds' hidden routes to their advantage, so they were prepared to reverse the ambush. In other words, Group C not only matched Group A in force but surpassed them strategically. Satisfied with that explanation, the instructor asks for the next reports concerning groups B and D. Another report reveals that those groups recognized Group E as the common threat and chose to cooperate against them. The instructor approves of that judgment, noting that this generation of trainees seems more promising than the previous one. He then turns to another subordinate, confirming she was responsible for the remaining groups and demanding her report. The woman identifies herself as Instructor Bruno and prepares to answer. Bruno admits that Group E made no meaningful progress after Leonard Cardenas closed in on them, and she singles out number 25 from Squad F. Faced with Leonard's involvement, she struggles to decide how to even begin explaining what happened. While hiding near a cave in the forest, the blue-haired trainee is startled when Colin calls him out by name despite his concealment. He realizes Colin has seen through a stealth technique that even instructors usually cannot detect. Colin turns and calmly announces that he has a question for him. The hidden trainee understands at once that Colin had noticed him all along. He drops the pretense and steps out to face Colin directly. Keeping a casual front, he asks whether Colin can see what is inside the cave. Colin explains that a beast seems to be using the cave as a den. The trainee presses further, asking whether the creature is one of Cardenas' tamed beasts. A large wolf emerges, and the trainee immediately judges that Colin could be killed if this goes badly. He confirms the wolf is a relatively safe beast trained by Cardenas, but warns that a trainee still cannot defeat a dire wolf alone. Even so, he decides to hold back for the moment and test whether Colin is bluffing about his confidence. Colin answers the warning by saying that if he cannot beat something at this level, he has no future as a top-grade adventurer. The trainee sharpens the challenge, making it clear that Colin must prove he can actually do it. The wolf accepts the provocation and prepares to attack in earnest. It launches forward with explosive speed, trying to overwhelm Colin immediately. Colin reads its movement in an instant and decides he can handle it. He counters cleanly, knocking the beast off balance and rejecting its claim to the cave. The wolf cries out as the exchange turns against it. Instead of collapsing, it regains its footing and squares up for another rush. The beast bares its fangs and commits to a fiercer assault. Power surges around it as it whips up a violent burst of force to crush him. Colin notices real killing intent behind the attack and realizes the beast has lost restraint. He decides that holding back any longer would only create more danger for both himself and the instructor. Accepting that he will have to hurt it, Colin moves decisively into the wolf's attack. He slips past its jaws with precise footwork and turns the charge against it. The wolf snaps at empty air as Colin gets fully inside its reach. Colin refuses to let himself be taken down so easily. He drives a crushing blow into the wolf and ends the fight in a single decisive strike. Watching the outcome, the trainee is stunned that Colin subdued the dire wolf so quickly and wonders if intervention is even necessary. Colin stays low and ready while the beast falters behind him, proving the victory was no fluke. The cave falls quiet, and the immediate threat disappears. A sudden shift follows as the wolf reappears not as a killer, but as an eager, playful creature responding to Colin. Colin tests that change by giving it a simple command to sit. The wolf obeys at once, dropping down obediently and waiting for more. When Colin asks for its paw, it offers one like a trained pet. Seeing the beast attach itself to Colin, he asks Instructor Colin if he may bring it along for the training. The trainee imagines how useful such a mount and companion could be, especially for movement, exploration, and survival. Colin agrees on conditions, acknowledging that taming beasts is part of the boy's ability. He forbids the wolf from participating in combat, allowing it only for travel and exploration, and notes that Colin had intended that restriction from the start. To enforce the rule, Colin uses a technique that makes the beast disappear from sight whenever needed. The trainee recognizes that Colin's technique would be extremely useful. With the matter settled, Colin tells the wolf to find food so the real training can begin. As they continue down the road, Colin notices a fork ahead and decides they should split into two groups. He instructs the wolf to bring back anything that catches its attention, not just food. The beast dashes off at once to carry out the order. The story then cuts to a darker aftermath, where an injured man wonders if it is already over and recognizes a monster before him. A blond man in dark clothes stands among fallen trainees and coldly concludes that there is no point saving someone who cannot survive even this much. He reveals another motive as well. There is no more room left to hold additional badges. He warns a survivor that this escape was pure luck and promises that next time they meet, he will kill him. The threatened trainee can only grit his teeth and curse the situation. Surrounded by stronger rivals, 438 realizes he was never capable of defeating them alone. He admits he knew from the start he had no real chance, and only pushed himself into leadership because someone had to decide what came next. That confession leaves him shaken, still searching for an answer. As the others look to him for direction and fear this may be the end of their run, the pressure to lead falls fully on him. Trying to keep everyone alive, he proposes regrouping and finding food instead of fighting. But before he can finish arguing that patience might still save them, the others notice something is wrong. 438 turns and realizes that luck may have changed in a very different way than he expected. A huge bear appears, and for a moment he thinks they have found the food they desperately needed. Someone suddenly charges in before the group can react. A blonde fighter drops onto the bear from above to stop it from reaching 438. the bear resists and prepares to retaliate. The beast is struck hard enough to roar in pain. 438 recognizes that the one who intervened is no ordinary participant. The bear collapses, and the blonde fighter stands on top of it after ending the threat almost instantly. The group realizes their rescuer is number 25, one of the top-ranked contestants. Furious and humiliated, 438 accuses him of stealing the prey they needed and calls him heartless. He insists the bear could have fed them for days and bitterly clings to the idea that they could have won without help. Ignoring the insult, number 25 checks whether 438 is hurt. Caught off guard by the concern, 438 can only stare back in confusion. Number 25 repeats the question plainly, making clear he is concerned with 438's condition, not the argument. Once he confirms 438 is uninjured, number 25 immediately turns to leave, saying that is all that mattered. He explains he stepped in only because the situation looked dangerous, not because he wanted their reward. He adds that he is not trying to win through badge theft at all and can gather food on his own. More than that, he says he wants to choose his opponents carefully rather than prey on the weak. 438 begins to understand and shifts the conversation toward number 25's unusually rapid rise in rank. With his hostility fading, 438 quietly admits he owes number 25 a debt. He openly thanks him for preventing his elimination. Number 25 rejects the idea that this was about earning gratitude. Before the exchange can settle, a strange presence interrupts them. An enormous wolf with an overwhelming aura reveals itself nearby. The beast's sudden appearance terrifies everyone and freezes the clearing. As the others panic, number 25 calmly gives the wolf a single command to sit. The giant wolf obeys at once and drops a limp body from its mouth. 438 and number 25 are both stunned by what the wolf has brought them. The fallen person is number 3, the blue-haired top-ranked contestant, badly injured and unconscious. 438 is horrified that someone of her level could be reduced to this state, though her badge suggests she is still alive. The wolf looms over them with a disturbingly eager expression, making the whole scene even more unnerving. Number 25 judges that only a monster or one of the very strongest contestants could have inflicted wounds this severe. He then turns to 438 and bluntly identifies his fear of elimination, forcing him to admit it. Treating the matter practically, number 25 offers the bear in exchange for the group taking care of number 3. 438 is left speechless as number 25 tells them not to become obsessed with rankings. Number 25 departs with the giant wolf, and 438 starts to think he may have completely misjudged him. Walking beside the wolf, number 25 reflects that he may have misunderstood the situation as well. Elsewhere, number 3 wakes in a bed with her injuries bandaged, unsure where she is. She steps outside under the night sky, still disoriented and trying to understand her surroundings. Seeing her own treatment, she wonders who could have saved her. A familiar voice confirms she is awake, and she instantly recognizes it. The sight of the speaker's clothing is enough to trigger her hostility before he even fully appears. She attacks number 25 on reflex, lashing out with a kick the moment she faces him. He blocks the strike and dryly notes that her leg seems fine, telling her not to waste energy and to rest. A wounded blue-haired girl confronts the blonde boy and demands the return of her squad badge. He hesitates, caught off guard by the demand and her condition. When he reaches toward her chest, he realizes the badge is still pinned to her uniform and that he never took it. Understanding the mistake, she falls silent and the tension eases as they face each other in the cave. She thanks him for saving her, but still feels awkward about the badge, while he dismisses the issue and refuses any credit for taking it. Instead of arguing, he offers her roasted meat and tells her to eat. As they sit by the fire, he reassures her that there is enough food and quietly resolves not to let her starve no matter what. Once she starts eating, he turns the conversation to her past, asking about her C-Squad service and the injuries she suffered. She denies that monsters caused those wounds, making it clear something more troubling happened. With visible bitterness, she begins recounting what happened right after her squad established camp. Her squad was suddenly ambushed and wiped out before they could mount a real defense. She blames herself as leader for being powerless, but he rejects the idea that the defeat was simply proof they never had a chance. He explains that losing to superior numbers is different from lacking ability, and insists that even inexperienced fighters can still win with the right approach. He frames battle as a matter of preemptive strikes and ambushes, especially for weaker groups facing stronger ones. Testing his theory, he asks whether the enemy called number 1 was the one who crippled her right arm, and she confirms that number 1 far surpassed number 2. He agrees her squad was outmatched in raw strength, but refuses to accept that strength alone decided everything. She suddenly realizes he is saying her squad leader failed to adapt and fought in frustration instead of properly changing tactics. He calmly affirms that even when people recognize a gap in strength, their fighting spirit does not vanish, and that impulse can be exploited. Her impression of him shifts as she starts seeing him as someone with the makings of a true warrior. He broadens the problem, warning that the collapse of B and D squads has bought the enemy time and may have let them form an alliance. He reasons that victors grow bolder, and if 2 squads combine, a direct fight becomes even harder, making a strategic ambush the only sensible answer. He concludes that the enemy will never expect an attack aimed at their strongest member, and becomes fully committed to that plan. When he says they should target a squad's weak point, she asks what he means. He reveals that the true weak point is number 1 himself, because everyone else revolves around him. He explains that a squad depends on its central pillar for unity and decision-making. If that pillar is broken, the whole group will collapse into disorder. In his mind, removing the leader turns an organized force into scattered pieces. She recognizes that his plan means taking revenge on number 1, and he openly admits that it does. He asks her to trust him. That direct request leaves her stunned. Moved by his resolve, she offers him the authority of leadership and asks if she should start calling him squad leader. Elsewhere in the forest, another group advances while their leader notes that the delay has worked in their favor. He tells his subordinate that time is on their side and that victory is certain if the current situation continues. He adds that the outcome will become clear very soon, showing complete confidence. The blonde leader senses something nearby and grows alert. He abruptly orders his squad to prepare for battle. His command spreads through the group as everyone moves into readiness. Even while preparing, he mocks the hidden enemy and says surrender would be wiser than resisting a hopeless fight. He then demands that those hiding stop lurking and reveal themselves. Opponents emerge from concealment, and he is pleased that he correctly detected them. The ambushes are shown to have surrounded his squad from the trees and brush. Rather than rattled, he treats the discovery like a game and taunts the hidden leader for being easier to sniff out than expected. A blonde girl at his side joins in, mocking the enemy as beneath him. Their side continues the contempt, dismissing the attackers as rabble unworthy of serious attention. The blonde leader singles out the opposing commander and sneers that someone of such low standing should never have dared face him. The blonde girl escalates the insult by calling that person a disgrace to the Cardenas family. She keeps posturing theatrically, and he cuts her down with a sharper insult, comparing her to a peacock rather than a fighter. He bluntly labels her incompetent, ending the exchange with open contempt. The standoff breaks as a violent strike suddenly tears across the ground. The attack slams into the earth hard enough to crater it, signaling that the battle has begun in earnest. A blonde trainee cuts to attackers in the forest, overwhelming multiple opponents at once. Nearby squads are ordered to rush him together and wipe out his group before he can keep dominating the field. The defenders brace themselves and are told that letting the enemy break through would mean collapse. One fighter is hurled into the formation, showing how violently the clash has already turned. The blonde boy meets a blonde girl in close combat and immediately realizes her strikes carry unusual force. Even while blocking, he feels the weight of every blow and is unsettled that her attacks are hard to read. He starts to understand that she is not an ordinary opponent but something abnormal. As she presses him, he identifies the source of her threat as a monstrous combat trait. When a heavy strike comes down, he catches the wooden weapon barehanded, shocking her. He mocks her for relying on cheap tricks and refuses to be intimidated by her strength. He slips inside her guard with sudden speed before she can recover. Driving in low, he lands a body blow that breaks her rhythm and steals the initiative. The girl thinks she has found an opening to counterattack from behind him. He seems exposed, but she notices too late that he is deliberately showing her a false weakness while reading her muscle movements. Her confidence falters as she realizes the opening is too obvious and that she may have been led into it from the start. She understands he baited this exact reaction and has been controlling the exchange all along. He moves before she can adjust, turning the trap shut. His counterattack blasts her away and ends the duel decisively. After defeating number 4, he coldly tells her she was at least better than the last opponent he crushed. He explains that even her attempt to exploit his openings looks slow to him because her movements were imperfect. The comparison to number 25 jolts her, making clear that someone even more dangerous is involved. She lashes out in frustration, but the fight is already lost. Dropped to the ground, she hears him dismiss her as all talk and little challenge. He forces her to acknowledge defeat and declares that number 2 would have lost to him regardless. He starts claiming victory over the entire training session, only to be interrupted. A blonde trainee in a white uniform, number 25, arrives carrying one defeated enemy while the injured girl looks on. Number 25 casually drags the captive aside, making his entrance feel effortless and ominous. The victor demands to know why number 25 is here, while number 25 treats the situation as trivial. Pointing to the fallen number 5, he says he merely returned the same treatment that had been inflicted on his own squad. The dark uniformed boy laughs off the idea of number 25 having a real squad at all. Number 25 calmly admits that was true at first, implying things have changed. That answer catches the other boy off guard. To prove his point, number 25 tells him to look at what has happened elsewhere in the forest. The scene reveals scattered fighters from stronger groups lying defeated across the ground. The scale of the rout shows that the balance of power has shifted far beyond this one duel. The weak, once hunted as worthless, have turned the tables and are now the ones bringing others down. One of the formerly weak trainees raises a captured badge in triumph, evidence of their unexpected success. Their side realizes they have gathered enough badges to survive and erupts with relief. They openly celebrate number 25 as the one who made their survival possible. Number 25 and number 3 arrive before them, and the sudden appearance leaves the celebrating group confused and wary. Expecting to be robbed of their gains, one of them panics, but number 25 instead offers an alliance. The weak squad hesitates, insisting they would only drag his team down if they joined him. Number 25 rejects that thinking and reminds them they are warriors shaped by Cardenas training, not by rank labels. He argues that numbers are more than name tags and that those receiving the same training are not separated by some vast natural gap. He adds that they also carry Cardenas blood, meaning they possess more talent and potential than they believe. He explains that only a tiny minority display exceptional traits, while most people are fundamentally built on similar strength. Using himself and number 3 as examples, he says high rank can come from effort rather than birthright alone. He reveals that he climbed from number 381 to number 25, proving that rank is not fixed destiny. One of the weaker trainees protests that only a rare few can rise that far and that their problem is lacking strength. Number 25 cuts him off and insists that raw strength is not the real issue. A superior challenges the shaken students, saying their real weakness is not talent but their refusal to believe in themselves. He presses them further, asking whether any of them has ever truly resolved to win, and promises to place that belief in them if they cannot. As those words land, number 25 steels himself, and the superior formally proposes that Class F challenge Class E. He openly invites them to prove themselves by defeating number 1 together. The proposal electrifies the group, and some immediately rally around the chance for an upset victory. But number 3 rejects the idea with contempt, refusing to join forces with people he considers beneath him. A blue-haired classmate backs number 25 instead, warning that she has fought him before and that his barehanded kick alone was overwhelming. She adds that his technique is far more refined than number 3's, undercutting his arrogance. Number 1 snaps back that he never allied with inferiors, only with those stronger than himself, and insists his squad's strength proves his judgment. He points to his team's success as evidence, boasting that his underlings are already crushing Class F. A sudden cheer from the forest confirms that Class F has in fact beaten his squad instead. One defeated member immediately accepts the new reality and asks to join number 25's side. Another follows her lead, choosing number 25 over number 1. A third kneels and admits that siding with someone he despises is still better than losing under number 1. That betrayal shocks number 1, especially when even number 4 abandons him. Enraged, he accuses them of disgracing the Cardenas bloodline by switching sides. The defectors reject his outrage, arguing that everyone present carries that blood and that he should stop clinging to pride and accept defeat. Number 1 refuses, calling out number 25 and moving to settle the matter directly. He challenges number 25 to a duel on the spot, declaring that victory or defeat between them will decide the fate of both squads. He vows to make number 25 understand the strength of the first-ranked heir. Number 25 calmly reveals that a direct duel was exactly what he wanted from the beginning. He adds that the warning about realizing strength applies more to number 1 than to himself. With that, number 25 invites him to attack and promises to force that realization. Observers recognize the clash between number 25 and number 1 as the battle that will decide everything. As the two face off inside the arena, the onlookers wonder whether number 1 will win as expected or whether the rankings are about to be overturned. Number 1 opens with a fierce rush, trying to overwhelm number 25 before he can settle in. He unleashes a relentless series of sword strikes, pressing with speed and raw force. Number 25 endures the barrage, though the spectators note that merely defending against it should be exhausting his arms. Number 1 remains confident, convinced that such pressure will break a mere trainee. He judges number 25's offense as straightforward and easy to read, believing experience still gives him the edge. Then number 25 suddenly changes the angle of his sword in a way number 1 did not expect. Watching closely, another observer realizes this must be the same kind of unexpected angle that once defeated number 2. A veteran spectator admits his surprise at how quickly number 25 has advanced. The duel confirms it, as number 25 reproduces the technique that let him surpass number 2 in such a short time. The veteran reflects that number 25 has done what should have been impossible for someone without a special trait. He then understands the hidden principle behind number 25's swordplay. The power appears when blades cross. That power is revealed as number 1's trait, psychokinesis, an invisible force. Number 1 uses that unseen force to bend his attacks into strange trajectories and strike from angles normal swordsmanship cannot create. Number 25 meets those warped attacks head-on, adapting fast enough to keep the duel even. The key, as the analysis explains, is that these altered swings come from lines where it is difficult to apply full physical force. Even so, for an ordinary trainee to read and counter them is extraordinary, because the hidden force makes the attacks far more destructive than they should be. The explanation continues as number 1 drives in again, showing that his trait amplifies all of his sword techniques. Number 1 realizes in frustration that number 25 has seen through the secret of his power. Their blades crash again in a violent exchange, either side yielding. At close range, number 25 pushes further, saying number 1 has not even shown his true strength yet. Provoked, number 1 demands to know why number 25 hid his own ability until now. Number 25 refuses to explain with words and tells him the sword itself will answer. A new trait manifests around number 25's blade, gathering as a red, sword-shaped power. Seeing that awakening, number 1 accepts the escalation with eager resolve. Before the next exchange can fully unfold, number 25 is struck by a sudden attack from the side, interrupting the moment. Observers note that number 1's attack isn't just a flashy long-range slash, but a strike whose force scales with distance. Number 1 presses number 25 to prove he understands that hidden principle and stop relying on confidence alone. Number 25 accepts the challenge and demands to see number 1's real ability. In response, number 1 unleashes a surge of power and prepares to show the full extent of his technique. Number 25 realizes he cannot match his old peak with his current weapon and limited external force, so he narrows his options to what he can still do directly. He settles on a simple answer: close in and cut number 1 down at close range. With that decision made, his killing intent sharpens and he commits fully to the charge. He bursts forward, whipping up a storm of force as he accelerates across the battlefield. Number 1 answers with sweeping blue slashes that tear across the ground to intercept him. Even while acknowledging number 25's speed, number 1 floods the area with attacks to keep him at bay. When speed alone fails to stop him, number 1 escalates and throws out an even stronger wave. The attack carves through a tree, showing how lethal the barrage would be if it connected. Number 25 twists through the chaos and avoids the strike by the narrowest margin. Watching closely, the spectators finally understand that number 1's power becomes effectively invisible at a certain range, which is why they misread it before. That revelation makes number 25's evasion seem even stranger, because he is dodging attacks he should barely be able to perceive. His movement suggests he is not merely surviving, but deliberately hiding strength while advancing through the barrage. One observer mistakes his caution for fear, but another immediately rejects that reading. The truth is the opposite. Number 25 is steadily moving in for the kill. A strategist explains that his retreating path is bait, meant to make number 1 think he is escaping. In reality, number 25 is subtly herding number 1 into a trap without letting him notice. He moves like a predator, shrinking the gap while preserving the illusion that he is the one being chased. By the time number 1 senses the danger, number 25 has already closed far more distance than expected. Number 25 slips inside his range, and number 1's confidence breaks as he realizes too late that close combat means defeat. Number 25 declares the outcome before the finishing blow lands. He swings with overwhelming force and sends number 1 crashing away. Number 1 can only stare in disbelief that he has been struck down by someone he considered beneath him. Number 25 drives through the exchange without hesitation, proving the gap in status meant nothing. The impact erupts through the forest like an explosion, leaving no doubt that the match has been decided. As number 1 tries to process the loss, he realizes this is more than a simple defeat. What reaches him is not just pain, but the overwhelming certainty that he had been standing on the edge of death. For a moment, that realization takes the form of pure terror. When he looks up, number 25's blade is already at his throat, confirming that his life was spared by choice, not by luck. Number 25 stands over him in complete control, having ended the fight the instant he got close enough. Number 1 laughs weakly, accepting the result instead of resisting it. The onlookers acknowledge the upset. Number 25 has defeated number 1. The arena falls into stunned silence as the shock of the reversal spreads. Even the overseer is caught off guard by what he has witnessed. Number 25 thanks number 1, saying the fight has given him something valuable rather than merely a victory. Confused, number 1 asks what he could possibly mean. Number 25 reflects that the burden of his father's harsh expectations and his obsession with being the strongest had defined him until now. This battle shattered those pressures and convictions, leaving him unexpectedly free. He downplays it aloud, unwilling to turn the moment into a grand confession. Instead, he simply honors number 1 as a worthy opponent. The tension finally drains from him as he exhales in relief. He offers number 1 a hand, and number 1 accepts, turning the end of the duel into mutual respect. Elsewhere, the other participants react with disbelief as the result is confirmed. Some lament their failed bets and misplaced faith in number 1. The overseer, however, treats the upset as a profitable and welcome surprise. With the match settled, the field training exercise is officially declared over. Afterward, even a former skeptic admits that number 25's performance was worthy of E-Squad's reputation. During a forest exercise, one trainee is pressured to team up with stronger classmates instead of trying to handle a lower-ranked challenge alone. A red-caped supervisor judges the monthly hunt as an unexpectedly satisfying success and prepares to wrap things up. Once the commotion settles, he orders the group to return and has his subordinate make the arrangements. He also sends word to the main house that the time has come to begin the coming-of-age ceremony. Elsewhere that night, the blonde boy quietly tells his giant wolf companion that he is leaving the next day and cannot bring it with him. The beast listens in subdued silence, taking in the separation. Trying to lighten the moment, the boy asks if the wolf is sad to see him go. Under the moonlight, the wolf answers with eager affection, making clear the feeling is mutual. The boy apologizes for leaving it behind, but turns the farewell into a promise. He vows to grow stronger and come back for the wolf. He adds that when that day comes, they will play together again, which finally cheers the beast. As he starts to leave, he tells the wolf to become strong enough to keep up with his future journey. He promises that the next time they meet, he will give it a name, turning the parting into a pledge for reunion. The next day, several trainees end up sharing the same carriage, and the awkward silence shows none of them expected this arrangement. When questioned, the others point out there was no rule saying they had to board by rank or number. The blue-haired girl admits she simply followed the leader, while the blonde girl says she came because the boy beside her is in her squad. The squad mate explains he only ever spoke with the top-ranked trainee during the first month, provoking irritation at being treated like some unreachable figure. Before the bickering can go further, the top-ranked boy says he has something important to tell them. His sudden seriousness is so unusual that the others joke he must have been hit too hard, and he snaps back at them. He then explains that once they return from training, all descendants of Cardenas will receive their final grades and face a true blood awakening ceremony. The ceremony centers on a blood awakening potion, making the announcement feel far more consequential than a routine school update. He reveals that every Cardenas carries a dormant dragon heart organ, and this ceremony is meant to awaken it. That revelation explains why their education has been limited to basics so far, and the others immediately want to know what awakening changes. He says it will let them manipulate mana much more freely, much like the spirit fruits and spirit stones they have already used in training. More importantly, awakening the organ is the gateway into the young dragon knighthood. That name is new to some of them, and he notes the organization has not yet been made public because only 7 knight houses officially exist. He explains that the young dragon knighthood is a special branch devoted to preparing the next generation through practical combat-focused training. From there he clarifies that trainees are grouped by grade according to their special organs, and those organs differ from person to person. More precisely, they are mana cores, whose number and elemental attributes vary by individual. The blue-haired girl adds the family claims dragon blood runs through the Cardenas line, though even she is unsure how literally that should be taken. The speaker boasts that among them, a single core is considered the best, because fewer cores mean far higher training efficiency, and he confidently counts himself in that category. He doubles down by declaring himself unquestionably single-cored, only to earn immediate annoyance for the smugness of it. The others dismiss his bragging as overconfidence, noting that true single-core awakenings appear only once every several years. To explain the system, he lays out the 5 possible core attributes, and the basic idea behind them. When someone asks if that means 5 cores are possible, he says a pentacore would be the worst training outcome imaginable. He explains that every extra core forces a trainee to double the needed resources while constantly balancing all of them, which is why efficiency collapses. Using simple examples, he shows how the burden scales sharply from single to triple and quad cores. By the time he reaches pentacore, the sheer cost and complexity sound monstrous enough to unsettle everyone. When he points out they should already know this from theory class, it becomes obvious at least one of them has never cared much for classroom study. The blue-haired girl shrugs that real fighters do not need theory, and the others reluctantly admit she has a point. Still, the discussion turns speculative as they wonder whether a pentacore, if somehow fully trained, might become the strongest possible build. The answer is that such a thing might work in theory, but in practice the resources required are so impossible that the idea is meaningless. Even so, the possibility lingers, and one of them jokes that if anyone could manage it, it would have to be someone absurdly gifted. That thought makes the blonde protagonist quietly imagine himself as a pentacore, tying the impossible scenario to his own hidden potential. Left alone with that idea, he wonders whether the dragon blood in his family might not be just a metaphor after all. Later, standing alone in a grand hall, he is still turning the implications over in his mind. He regrets blurting out so much earlier, sensing he may have exposed more than he intended. His reflection is cut short when he suddenly detects danger and his focus sharpens instantly. He reacts in time to evade a violent attack that tears through the hall where he had been standing. As the dust and force of the strike swirl around him, an unseen observer coolly acknowledges that his response was impressive. A knight examiner is impressed that someone so young can perceive sword intent. The visitor is identified as young Dragon Knighthood Commander Fabian, confirming the rumors about his status were true. Fabian introduces himself to Leonard and openly marvels that Leonard has reached this level at such a young age. He judges Leonard's control extraordinary, especially because he achieved it without relying on aura. Leonard explains that martial skill is not just technique but something built through the body itself. Fabian realizes Leonard has grasped that aura training and bodily martial completion are separate matters. Pleased, Fabian bursts into laughter and slaps him hard in approval. Leonard takes the rough praise well, and Fabian likes his spirit even more. Fabian formally promises, in his own name and as a senior knight, to see Leonard rewarded properly. He declares Leonard worthy of special treatment and guarantees him the best support available. When an aide worries because Leonard only just passed the pentacore ceremony, Fabian dismisses the concern. To Fabian, raw rank matters less than real potential. The aide backs him up, insisting Leonard should ignore petty criticism because his talent deserves full investment. As proof of that support, Leonard is handed a spatial bag stocked with essentials. Fabian adds that Leonard will also be allowed to choose his own training destination. He opens a magical selection space containing locations far beyond ordinary training grounds. Although such placements are usually assigned by skill, Fabian grants Leonard the right to decide for himself. Leonard immediately asks which site best matches his current level, catching Fabian's interest. Fabian approves of the question and argues that anyone serious about martial growth cannot avoid the path of hardship. He chooses Calabogos for Leonard. Fabian explains that Calabogos is the most remote island in the Empire. Its environment is so savage that even veteran knight candidates have abandoned their training there. He warns that some regions are so dangerous they are effectively demon territory. The place is populated by monstrous creatures powerful enough to make the threat feel immediate. Even so, Leonard accepts the assignment without hesitation and thanks Fabian for the opportunity. Privately, he reflects that pentacore training is only considered difficult because most people do not understand the right method. He believes the 5 elements should be raised together as one system rather than separately. To Leonard, this new training is a chance to surpass even what he achieved in his previous life. With that resolve, he steps through the portal toward Calabogos. As he emerges into the light, he braces himself and prepares to see what awaits him. He arrives in Calabogos, a vast forested wilderness. A sudden voice welcomes him from the quiet woods, startling him. He finds a man in a green cloak and realizes this must be the trainer everyone mentioned. Leonard introduces himself politely. The man identifies himself as Bradley, manager of Carabagos and a senior knight of the Dragon Knighthood's first squad. Bradley tells Leonard they should move and notes that Leonard has not yet met the others. As they walk, Bradley explains that everyone here is an apprentice knight like Leonard, though Leonard notices he does not seem much older. Bradley warns him to show proper respect to seniors and not to provoke upperclassmen. He adds that Leonard will remain under his protection for only half a year, after which he must manage on his own. Bradley says he normally would not interfere with food, clothing, or shelter, but Fabian specifically asked him to provide Leonard a place to sleep. He leads Leonard to a room and tells him it contains what he needs. Bradley makes clear that, aside from that favor, Leonard is expected to be self-sufficient and solve the rest himself. With the basic explanation finished, Bradley asks if Leonard has any questions. Leonard asks what separates the protection period from the training period. Bradley explains that during the first 6 months he will support Leonard, but during the following year and a half the other trainees will effectively be left to fend for themselves. When Leonard asks about harming others, Bradley answers that killing is absolutely forbidden. Leonard then asks to see the training resources he has been given. Bradley reveals a huge supply of low-grade spirit stones and elixirs for each attribute, far more than Leonard expected for a newcomer. Bradley is surprised by how much Leonard received and concludes Fabian must have taken a special liking to him. Leonard examines a spirit stone and learns it is condensed mana that can be used to strengthen the body. The boy learns that with enough spirit stones, even someone at the 10th stage of the first realm can eventually reach the 5th major realm, a level that sounds almost unreal to him. His instructor begins a formal explanation, saying the boy first needs to understand how cultivation is structured. He lays out the system. Martial artists advance through 5 major realms, each divided into 10 minor stages, with each breakthrough bringing them closer to becoming a true martial artist. The first realm, body tempering, is simply about filling and strengthening the body with mana. The second realm, external power, doubles that strength by turning the tempered mana into an aura around the body. The third realm, origin opening, creates a pentacore in the chest that stores mana instead of relying only on the body. The fourth realm, demigod, lets that core influence the world outside the body and manipulate mana directly. The fifth realm is true divinity, where one transcends humanity altogether. That final stage is presented as the divine realm, a godlike state beyond ordinary warriors. But the instructor immediately tempers the lesson by saying no one has reached it except the legendary first ancestor, Cardanus. He dismisses the tale as likely propaganda, arguing that even the strongest monsters in history were still mortal enough to be killed. Ending the lecture, he shifts from theory to practice and tells the boy it is time to begin training in earnest. The first assignment is straightforward: use the spirit stones to improve his body and expand his mana hole. The instructor explains that cultivation is basically the absorption of energy stored inside spirit stones. Then he leaves the boy alone with only a curt wish of luck, offering no further guidance. Left in silence, the boy is baffled by how abruptly the lesson ended. He studies the scattered spirit stones and realizes the task is simply to absorb them. Reasoning that the process should not be difficult if it is only energy absorption, he decides to test it himself. As soon as he tries, he senses that this may actually work in his favor. He remembers he already experienced a similar kind of absorption in a previous life, giving him immediate confidence. Yet as he continues, something about the speed of his progress feels abnormal. His body begins to blaze with power, confirming that his advancement is happening far faster than expected. He realizes he has reached the third stage in only a few hours, a pace that should have taken an ordinary person an entire day just to hit the second. Because his memories from another life remain intact, he can train with the discipline of an adult mind instead of a child's, and he starts thinking this pace could let him recover his old strength quickly. He concludes that if one day of training can produce this much growth, then several more days might let him regain techniques from his past life. That thought triggers a vivid image of his former self, reminding him of the power he once possessed. He becomes convinced that with enough time, he may be able to reclaim those old abilities and perhaps even the body that once supported them. Outside the hut, 3 youths gather and notice movement from within. They are impressed that he has stayed shut inside for over a month, correcting themselves to a month and a half. They infer he is trying to survive the harsh area by cultivating until at least the 5th stage, though one of them dryly notes that hearing the minimum needed is not comforting. Rather than dwell on him, they decide to go fishing and focus on their own survival. One complains that if they cannot hunt effectively today and tomorrow, they will have to spend spirit stones just to get by, which is embarrassing given how weak they still are. Their bickering continues as they admit they are among the weakest around and should at least be strong enough to handle orcs. As they move off, the hut door begins to open behind them. Someone steps out at last, drawing a relieved breath after the long seclusion. The boy emerges looking worn but sharper, and immediately starts thinking beyond cultivation to practical combat, wondering if it is time to get a real sword. A familiar voice answers before he can go further, showing his instructor has already anticipated the request. When asked why he wants one, the boy explains that he needs to adapt to a real blade instead of relying on wooden practice weapons. The instructor reads the request as a sign that the boy has grown stronger and a little too confident. Without warning, he releases pressure so intense that the ground around them bursts apart, forcing the boy to confront the gap between them. Rather than anger, the instructor reacts with interest. He reveals the reason: the boy's pentacore has already reached the 3rd stage in just a month. He acknowledges that this growth rate is extraordinary, but his tone turns severe. He warns that the boy is still far too weak to be acting proud, especially in his current state. The boy is shaken as the warning lands with full force. Then the instructor abruptly tosses him a real sword and tells him not to panic. He cautions the boy not to do anything reckless, while the boy accepts the weapon with gratitude. When the boy worries about what happens if the sword breaks, the instructor casually adds that losing it will cost him spirit stones. He makes it even harsher by saying the same penalty applies if the weapon is damaged, reducing the matter to a simple debt. With that, the instructor leaves him to it, offering only a blunt order to do his best. A blonde swordsman studies a map and notes that he has at least found a sword to work with. Judging his route by moonlight, he decides to investigate the marked danger in the Forest of Remnants. Deep in the forest, a pale goblin-like creature is already being surrounded by other monsters. The hunt closes in as the creatures rush over the ground toward their target. He identifies the species as hobgoblins, low-rank monsters that roam the forest in packs. One of them is cut down in a burst of blood before it can react. The swordsman steps out and makes clear he intends to kill them cleanly and quickly. He advances without hesitation, crushing the ground underfoot as he charges. His blade tears through the pack in a single fluid rush, promising them a painless end. Another hobgoblin dies instantly, its body breaking apart into black dust. As it vanishes, he notes that slain monsters leave behind mana condensed into spirit stones. He casually collects the dropped stone and judges the reward decent, though not enough to satisfy him. He recalls that the Forest of Remnants is a monster habitat where only rank-breaking creatures survive, and new movement catches his attention. A sudden sound makes him turn, sensing a different kind of threat nearby. The scent tells him this newcomer is no goblin but something closer to a gnoll. He tightens his grip, preparing for a more serious fight. As violent slashes of force sweep toward him, he realizes the enemy is not even trying to hide its presence. Rather than retreat, he welcomes the challenge and braces himself. With a predatory grin, he taunts the beast to come closer. The attack crashes in with explosive force. A wolf-headed monster lunges out of the haze, roaring as it closes the distance. Its heavy strike smashes through the ground, showing far more power than the earlier monsters. He meets the assault calmly, guarding himself and reading its rhythm. Facing the beast head-on, he dismisses its noise and keeps control of the exchange. The creature answers with another furious howl. He realizes the monster can redirect the path of its attacks with monstrous force, making its swings harder to predict. He counters by springing above its line of attack and cutting into its body from outside its reach. The blade bites into dense muscle, but the wound is shallower than expected. That resistance alarms him, because this strength does not match the information he had on an ordinary gnoll. He reviews the ranking gap in his head. Hobgoblins are only E2 after evolving from goblins. By contrast, even a normal gnoll stands at D1, already far above them. He remembers that monsters usually awaken new power only after evolving once. Since this one does not resemble a normal gnoll at all, he realizes it must be something beyond that stage. The system confirms his suspicion. The enemy is an Agnoll, rank D3. Accepting that this is no ordinary hunt, he decides he has to get serious. He recalls his own training and the beast senses the shift in him, startled by the sudden pressure. He unleashes a wild blue arc of sword energy that tears across the battlefield. Even as he attacks, he judges that a reckless strike like that will not land cleanly. The Agnoll slips through the attack and charges straight at him with an axe. They clash at close range, the beast using brute strength to force him back. Its weapon grinds against his blade so hard that sparks jump from the impact. He twists away before the pressure can pin him down. The Agnoll slams its axe into the ground with enough force to crater the earth. The embedded axe briefly traps the monster in place. Seeing the opening, he darts in, knowing this is his chance before the weapon comes free. He whips around the beast's guard and drives his attack toward its head. Having judged its muscles and bones too tough for an easy kill, he targets the one vulnerable point instead. He identifies the exposed snout as the part the monster cannot protect. His strike lands flush on the face, detonating with enough force to snap the beast's head back. The forest falls momentarily still after the blow, leaving the outcome hanging in the mist. A blonde trainee stands over a slain beast and is surprised to find it carried only a low-grade spirit stone. He judges the forest's monsters weaker than expected, making the reward disappointing. Still, he sees an advantage. If he keeps killing creatures like this, his internal energy should grow faster. As he leaves the remains behind, he notes that no stronger monsters seem willing to approach this place, which suits him for now. A hidden wooden hut in the forest suddenly opens with a burst of light. Inside, he settles into meditation as energy swirls around him and his sword rests nearby. He realizes his body tempering has advanced unusually quickly, but that rapid progress also creates a problem. If someone from the Pentacle notices he has broken through stage after stage in only months, his growth will draw dangerous attention. Hearing voices outside, he suspects people have come because his long absence has become suspicious. The visitors note that 3 months have passed and that he still has not shown himself. A group of senior trainees complains about having to check on him every day. One of them insists they must be the first good seniors he meets, making clear they are trying to shape his impression. Their talk reflects the Academy's ruthless culture, where a single connection can outweigh talent and determine survival. They point to him as the commander's favorite number one, someone already marked as important. Deciding to force a meeting, one senior kicks the door while another brings food as a pretense. They call through the door, urging the rookie to eat if he wants his training to continue. When there is no answer, they fear he may have died inside, though they doubt it after hearing movement. From within, he concludes these seniors are more capable than expected and are deliberately testing him. Peering through a gap, he studies one of their faces closely. He decides the visitor is only an ordinary senior, not someone like Leonard who would be too dangerous to fool. With that reassurance, he decides to try an old disguise technique he is not sure he can still perform. He begins a reverse utilization art meant to alter the veins and structure of his face. He recalls learning it after becoming a sword emperor, when hiding his identity became necessary. The transformation strains him, but he forces the technique through. Under the moonlit mountain, he commits himself to living in this body while concealing the power he once had. When the disguise settles, he checks his hands and decides the change should be convincing enough to avoid notice. He accepts the borrowed identity of Hayden for the time being. 3 months later, he is deep in Bone Mountain Swamp, moving through a far deadlier training ground. By now he has learned the swamp's ironclad rule for survival. He races through the marsh, applying that rule in practice. Every creature here carries poison and some means of concealment, so carelessness means death. Because of that, he advances cautiously and treats every patch of terrain as a possible ambush. He keeps the elevated footing and reminds himself that even ordinary-looking swamp lizards can vanish into the environment and strike from nowhere. The moment danger stirs beneath him, he shifts his footing to react. A hidden lizard lunges up from below, but he is already above it with sword drawn. He drives down hard onto the monster, crushing its momentum. Then he follows with a clean slash that tears through its neck and sprays black blood. As the corpse drops, he realizes the commotion may have awakened the area's boss. A larger white reptilian beast immediately charges, confirming his fear. The boss barrels in with brute speed, trying to overwhelm him head-on. He reads the attack at once, judging the creature fast but predictable. Using that simplicity against it, he avoids the rush and cuts through its opening with practiced swordsmanship. A spirit stone is exposed as the beast is struck down. He catches the stone and notes that he has already reached the 3rd step of body tempering, but this prize should help him push further. He reflects that crossing major boundaries is always dangerous, especially for body tempering, where the body can collapse if the process fails. Even so, he believes his current state and the hidden methods he remembers should let him survive the breakthrough if he prepares properly. He resolves to keep both his strength and his true methods secret from everyone around him. Setting off again, he searches the forest on foot for a suitable place. He decides he needs a sheltered spot where he can suppress the shockwave of his next advancement and stay protected from wind and rain. Sensing something ahead, he turns his attention toward a new presence before he can continue. A young swordsman discovers a hidden field of glowing herbs deep in the forest and immediately realizes it is no ordinary place. Seeing how many spirit herbs are growing there, he notes that their mana value far exceeds even spirit stones. He suspects the cave's troll guardian must somehow be managing and cultivating this field. The troll suddenly senses danger and turns hostile, alerted by an approaching presence. The swordsman also feels the threat closing in and braces himself from concealment. The troll prepares for battle as the disturbance erupts into the clearing. A lightning-wreathed lycanthrope bursts in, and the swordsman realizes 2 monsters are about to clash. The lycanthrope launches the first strike with explosive speed. Lightning tears across the troll's body as the beast's attack lands with overwhelming force. The lycanthrope presses the assault like a territorial challenger claiming the area by force. Watching the storm-like power, the swordsman is stunned that monsters of this level can command natural forces themselves. The troll answers by ripping up the earth, showing brute strength great enough to shake the ground apart. But the lycanthrope avoids the counterattack almost instantly, moving with speed that seems close to lightning itself. Their fight escalates into a violent exchange of speed and power that tears up the clearing. Both monsters bear their killing intent, making it clear either will back down easily. The lycanthrope drives forward with a concentrated lightning attack, forcing the troll into a direct clash. Using the chaos as cover, the swordsman slips away from the battlefield. He decides the monster's struggle gives him the perfect chance to investigate the cave. Reasoning that a troll of this level must be guarding something valuable, he heads inside expecting treasure or a rare resource. The moment he steps into the cave, the sounds of the battle vanish completely. He realizes the cave is isolated by a boundary, and identifies it as an ideal place to hide something important. That unnatural silence makes him question what kind of place he has entered. Deeper inside, he finds the source, a radiant golden tree illuminating the cavern like a sacred treasure. He connects it to the herbs outside and concludes the troll has been growing mid-grade spirit herbs around this tree. Yet something feels wrong, because despite the huge concentration of spiritual energy, he sensed nothing from outside. He tests the cave wall with his own lightning-infused power to probe the hidden mechanism. His energy reveals a hexagonal barrier woven through the cave, confirming the place is shielded. He understands that this barrier is what concealed the cave and its contents. Studying the golden tree, he is baffled by its nature and rarity. Even with his knowledge of mid-grade spirit herbs, he cannot identify a tree like this or explain its existence. He judges it to be at least high-grade and doubts the troll even understands what it is guarding, though he wants to report it to the major boundary immediately. Before he can act, he senses a new threat and his attention sharpens. The troll appears behind him, bloody but alive, and the swordsman realizes the battle outside ended faster than expected. He reacts instantly, firing off a swift attack as the troll closes in. The strike buys him a moment, and he understands the troll returned because the tree mattered more than chasing its rival. Seeing the troll up close, he notices it is already badly wounded. The damage is severe enough that its combat injuries have not begun to heal, revealing how hard the lycanthrope hit it. Even so, the troll forces itself into another charge, driven by rage and the need to protect the cave. Its attack smashes through the cavern and threatens to collapse the entrance to trap him inside. The swordsman evades through the falling debris, keeping just ahead of the cave-in. He realizes the troll deliberately targeted the entrance instead of him, choosing confinement as its advantage. Rather than panic, he smiles and accepts the fight on those terms. Drawing lightning around himself, he decides to take the troll head-on. Outside, the collapsing rock seals off the cave and cuts the battlefield from the forest. The cave-in finishes, leaving the confrontation contained underground. Within the collapsing chamber, he rushes forward through the chaos, impressed that the wounded troll still had enough strength to force this situation. The troll reaches for him with renewed aggression, betting that one solid blow will end the fight. The swordsman knows a single direct hit would be fatal, so he keeps moving with precise control. He acknowledges the troll's cunning and prepares a more decisive response. With his resolve set, he begins whatever plan he has in mind for ending the battle. The blonde swordsman closes in through the cave, pressing his attack against the wounded tusked monster. Seeing the creature already battered, he decides to finish the fight with a single decisive blow. His blue energy lashes around the monster's neck, and the beast is jolted as the strike catches it off guard. He drives in hard, but the monster's body is still shielded by earth and stone, blunting what should have been a killing hit. Realizing the defense comes from elemental reinforcement, he identifies his enemy as an earth element user from the start. The monster answers by igniting the battlefield, surrounding them with flames and turning the cave into a furnace. It slams power into the ground, sending fire and force erupting upward to keep the swordsman at bay. The cave floor breaks apart under the impact, making direct contact even more dangerous. From above the burning ground, the swordsman concludes that this elemental affinity explains how the windropes were defeated. He openly states that his opponent has always been a dual-element user, not merely a brute relying on strength. The monster glares back with a growl, ready to crush him before he can exploit that insight. It charges through the flames, using the inferno and broken terrain as part of its offense. The beast judges that the swordsman cannot win from a distance, and tries to force him into close range where the heat will kill him. The swordsman retreats through the collapsing rock, knowing that touching the superheated area directly would melt him instantly. He steadies himself, and decides the only path to victory is to find one opening and end everything in a single strike. As he launches into position, the movement reminds him of a dragon technique he has used before. The moment the monster plants its foot, he recognizes the opening he was waiting for. He dives in with full commitment, aiming past the heat and armor before the chance disappears. The monster swings to intercept, but the swordsman slips inside its reach. The familiar sensation confirms he has entered the kind of life-or-death exchange he knows best. The monster unleashes a concentrated blue blast and declares that this attack will end the battle. It hurls itself upward through the flames, trying to catch him in the air and erase his escape route. The swordsman twists away midair, narrowly avoiding the direct line of the attack. He drops behind the monster as it overextends, turning its own momentum against it. Before the beast can recover, he drives a blue blade of energy straight toward its chest despite its warning that he is too late. The strike pierces through the monster's torso and bursts out the other side, seemingly landing the finishing blow. Pulling back, the swordsman believes the pierced chest means the fight is finally over. That certainty vanishes the instant he senses something wrong inside the wound. Instead of a normal fatal injury, he finds a glowing crystal embedded in the monster's chest. The crystal fractures under the hit, revealing that it was the true core sustaining the creature. The broken core detonates in a massive explosion that engulfs the cave. The blast tears outward through the cavern and into the surrounding growth. Flames spread across the ground outside as the explosion keeps rolling through the area. The swordsman realizes too late that striking from this distance left him inside the blast radius. The explosion throws him violently away before he can shield himself. He slams into the cave wall and is battered again by the force of the detonation. Barely conscious, he understands the impact has nearly shattered his body. As fire closes in around his resting place beneath a tree, he sees that if the flames reach him now, he will burn alive. He accepts that in a cave like this, no outside help is coming. Remembering the spirit stones and the way they once restored his mana organs, he decides he cannot afford to hesitate. He reaches for the scattered crystals despite his injuries, gambling everything on their power. Drawing their energy into himself, he commits fully to healing and recovery. He feels the mana from the spirit stones permeating his damaged mana organs and starting to repair them. Inside him, the healing spreads through his body as the stones restore what the battle broke. But once he rises, he realizes the recovery is still incomplete and not enough to secure survival. So he resolves to absorb every spirit herb in the cave and force his body to recover further. He grabs the glowing herbs and consumes them immediately, pushing more power into himself. With the preparations finished, energy begins circulating around him as his internal system starts operating at full capacity. The pentacore activates and all of its rotations begin at once, bringing his different energies into alignment. At last he feels every source of power within him merging into a single unified force. While meditating inside a surge of power, the young man feels his body transform as if he has gained a new heart. His injuries and mana recover completely, and the breakthrough pushes him into a higher realm. But the torrent of energy keeps raging far beyond what a human body should be able to endure, leaving him wondering why it still has not stopped. As the power takes the shape of a dragon, he realizes the force resembles the dragon's energy he encountered before. The violent surge finally settles around the great tree, its golden leaves scattering as the cave calms. He concludes that not only has his pentacore mana fused into him, but his realm has leapt straight into the third stage of the external force realm. Given that the other seniors needed years to reach the second stage, he immediately understands this advance will cause a major stir if exposed. Testing himself, he finds his wounds fully healed and his mana circulating even faster than before. The sheer gain from crossing one major boundary astonishes him. He then questions how such a massive explosion of spiritual energy could have been contained in this sealed cavern at all. The answer clicks into place for him. He focuses on the glowing fruit hanging from the tree as the likely source of what remains. He realizes the blinding light has faded because all that overflowing energy has condensed into a single fruit. From that, he infers the fruit's spiritual power must have shielded both him and the cave from the pillar of fire. When he takes it in hand, the fruit feels strangely natural to him, as if it already belongs with him. Remembering the earlier storm of mana, he suspects the fruit absorbed every last trace of it. Grateful, he decides to plant its seed later in repayment for saving his life. With that settled, he heads back out of the cavern. He hurries, knowing his long absence will draw suspicion if he does not return quickly. He bursts back through the exit with far more force than intended. The accidental launch sends him racing through the air, making his new strength impossible to ignore. He realizes he has become so much stronger that even simple movement is hard to control, and he worries about causing a scene. Spotting the training grounds ahead, he sees he has made it back before things escalated. He lands and notes with relief that he returned in time. As he gathers himself, he decides he needs a believable explanation for his changed appearance, and remembers the months of secret training he can use as cover. A nearby trainee notices him first. The others are startled that the sealed door has opened and that someone has emerged from it. One of them rushes up in shock, introduces himself as Ian, and addresses him respectfully as a senior. He gives the name Leonard instead. Ian admits he has hit a wall in swordsmanship and asks Leonard for a spar to help him break through. Though surprised by the sudden request, Leonard accepts because it gives him a chance to learn more about this world's combat. Ian eagerly leads him off, while Leonard quietly notes that this invitation gives him the initiative. Ian promises to show him what it means to be a man of Cardinia, and Leonard is pleased to have gained the upper hand in the exchange. Ian has no idea what is coming. The spar begins, and Leonard ends it almost instantly by knocking Ian off balance before the other man can understand what happened. Ian immediately yields, and Leonard is declared the winner. That result draws sudden attention from the others. A second trainee charges in, turning the single spar into a fast two-man assault. Even while pressured, Leonard is irritated rather than threatened, because their skill level is far below what he expected from a training ground. He braces as another strike comes in, still trying to read how combat here really works. When the blow lands, he counters through sheer physical superiority and sends his attacker flying. At the same time, a burst of flame-like mana wraps around the wooden weapon, revealing that their attacks can carry magical force. The trainees are shocked that he is using mana at all, and Leonard is caught off guard by the accusation. As the others rush over to check on Hayden, Leonard confirms he is fine and tries to calm the situation. He apologizes, claiming he instinctively used a self-defense technique. Looking at his scraped hand, he realizes that even blocking a sword with mana can still injure him. That discovery teaches him that swordsmanship alone is not enough in this world. He explains that he only meant to thank them for helping with his return training, but Ian notices his behavior no longer matches the Leonard they knew. Ignoring the suspicion for the moment, Leonard takes hold of the training weapon and proposes that their practice continue. He welcomes the idea of ongoing training, seeing it as the perfect chance to adapt to this world while keeping his cover intact. When asked if he still intends to proceed, the blonde trainee insists he would keep doing this every day if he could, and the older man reluctantly agrees to support him while warning him to stay careful. A knock at a wooden door interrupts the moment and draws attention outside. A knight named Leonard arrives and reports that the planned session is cancelled. The blonde trainee notices Leonard's armor differs from the usual knight order gear and immediately wonders if the man is really prepared for combat. Leonard explains that a major disturbance near Bone Mountain Marsh forced him to rush over, while the trainee quietly notes this helps keep his own movements from drawing suspicion. The disturbance was a territorial clash between a lycanthrope and a troll that somehow reached the true demon realm. The aftermath was grotesque. The troll was burned to a crisp, and the lycanthrope was found completely flayed. The scale of the carnage makes it sound like a deadly duel between monsters, and with senior knights already moving to investigate, the trainees are told to stay out of the chaos. Leonard says he is leaving as part of the knight training group and orders the blonde trainee to rest because his combat level is still too low. Before going, Leonard remembers he brought something for him. He hands over 5 swords, assuming the trainee has probably broken enough practice weapons already and will need replacements. The trainee accepts gratefully, and Leonard reminds him that the upcoming event is important. As Leonard leaves, the trainee outwardly agrees to take it easy, while inwardly dismissing the warning because he has no intention of missing this chance. He realizes that turning the commotion to his advantage could let him slip past the Night Order's notice, though one careless move would ruin everything. With everyone's attention pulled elsewhere, he decides the distraction is perfect and starts moving. He quickly changes into a dark cloak, planning to use the raven-like disguise technology to move more freely without exposing himself. He judges that running now, while the knights are already mobilizing, will only add to the confusion instead of standing out. Though he finds it inelegant, he decides to hide himself with the lycanthrope's hide if everyone is gathering in one place. Convinced this is a once-in-a-lifetime opening, he heads out at speed, determined to move about freely. His destination is the far side of the training grounds. From there, he sets his sights on the Owl Plains and begins exploring on his own. Once inside the defense fog, he finds the area unnervingly quiet and watches for movement. He knows he can fill the area with a gas cloud, but the lack of any attack makes him question what the monsters are waiting for. Unable to tell whether they are cautious or simply absent, he decides lingering here is pointless. Before he can move on, something huge drops into the area from above. A giant owl-like monster descends in front of him, finally revealing the first challenger. He calmly identifies it as an owlbear and prepares to test himself against it. Judging it to be a monster suited to his current level, he draws his sword and welcomes the fight. Elsewhere, a darker operation reaches Calabago's island under the cover of dusk. A cloaked group lands on the shore and immediately notes that 2 members are missing. Their leader concludes those 2 failed to catch the bird and fell into the sea, but insists the mission continues despite the detour. Invoking Kuji's 5th shadow, the leader frames their cause as a righteous struggle. The gathered shadows answer with fanatic loyalty, ready to act in Kuji's name. Their orders are to capture the Cardenas trainees alive so they can uncover the secret behind the bird that escaped. They are warned not to underestimate the targets just because they are young, because these trainees are considered the kingdom's finest. The island soon erupts into motion as the hunt begins. One cloaked fighter sprints across the rocky ground at full speed. He realizes he has become separated from the others almost immediately. As he clashes with a monster, he is struck by how many high-rank creatures inhabit this island and starts questioning what Cardenas is really doing here. The sight of these monsters makes him suspect the people from Cardenas are involved in something far more dangerous than expected. He reflects that such creatures have never appeared in the plains before, which means someone must have brought them to the island. From that, he concludes the monsters are being deliberately gathered into one place, and that concentration itself may become an opportunity. Spotting what seems like a manageable owlbear, he decides to take it down quickly. He leaps in for a killing strike from above. But just as he commits, he notices the beast is already dead. Landing on the corpse, he realizes another skilled fighter must have been here first. That discovery makes him freeze and reassess the danger around him. His alarm spikes when more dead beasts nearby begin glowing with blue energy, proving there is not just one hidden combatant but someone highly capable still active in the area. A rock suddenly flies toward him from off-screen. He barely reacts before the projectile closes in, and an unseen attacker forces the confrontation into the open. A cloaked attacker lunges first, but the blonde youth cuts in and seizes control of the encounter. The assassin is caught off guard that his opening move has been interrupted so easily. The youth forces him back and demands to know who he is. When the man refuses to answer, the youth decides he will identify him by force. The assassin realizes his voice is failing him and his disguise is already becoming a liability. He draws a blade charged with a dangerous, blood-soaked power. He answers with a sweeping, lethal strike meant to overwhelm the boy at once. The youth recognizes the sword as one steeped in bloodlust and notes that its wielder has no intention of retreating. He meets the assault head-on and blocks it with surprising skill. The assassin is shaken that a mere boy stopped an attack he expected to be decisive. Refusing to lose momentum, the youth presses forward. The fight spills across the open ground as both rush into a faster exchange. The assassin releases a venomous purple force through his weapon to break the boy's guard. The youth immediately judges the technique shallow and suspects the sword is some kind of magical artifact. He counters with a sharper, more disciplined burst of power. Seeing that technique from someone so young, the assassin compares him to a snake and realizes the boy may be far more dangerous than expected. He also understands that if the youth truly masters it, the assassin himself could die here. The youth asks whether the man hid something in his sword, identifying the style as a cunning assassination art. He closes in and points out that the sword's corruption is obvious. Their blades lock, and the assassin mocks him as inexperienced against real killers. Even while taunting him, the assassin starts setting a trap. Purple chains erupt around the youth, binding his movement and pinning his sword. The assassin pities him for carelessly sacrificing his weapon to the snare. The youth instantly realizes he has been baited. The assassin is stunned when the boy simply throws the trap sword away instead of clinging to it. The youth rejects the idea that losing a weapon makes him helpless and calls the assassin's thinking childish. He bursts through the opening with sheer aggression. His strike lands cleanly and sends the assassin flying despite the trap. Reeling from the blow, the assassin is forced to admit the boy's talent is extraordinary and begins to suspect he has awakened the power of his tainted blood. Night deepens under a full moon as the battle's outcome turns decisively. Later, the youth approaches with calm purpose. He confronts the now captured assassin and makes it clear that the man's life depends entirely on his cooperation. Bound and humiliated, the assassin can only spit back that the youth is a coward. He rages that a filthy Cardenas devil has no right to mock him with stolen power, and swears he will never forgive it. The youth listens without flinching. He dismisses the accusation, points to the shattered cursed weapon, and notes that calling him a coward after losing is absurd. The prisoner keeps shouting that there is no honor in fighting dirty with a Cardenas gift, and vows to expose whatever power the youth used. The youth raises a fist, ready to silence the tantrum if needed. Broken by fear and pain, the assassin suddenly begs to be killed instead. The youth coldly refuses him even that dignity, saying death is not his choice to claim. The prisoner insists he would rather die than speak and condemns the youth's inherited impure blood. That insult makes the youth focus on the name Cardenas bloodline and ask if that is what the man means. The assassin points to the youth's blood and insists the proof is literally flowing through him. He claims the Cardenas are monsters born among humans, descended from bloodthirsty beings tied to an ominous red moon. Instead of denying it, the youth shows interest and pushes him to reveal how much he really knows. Under the moonlight, he demands a direct answer and warns the man not to waste his last chance. The assassin argues that if the Cardenas line were truly legitimate, even its branch families would not need to hide beyond the country. The youth takes that in, recognizing the implication. He presses further, asking whether the hidden branch families are the reason the man tried to throw him off a cliff, and notes that the assassin would not have called him a child-serving devil otherwise. As he walks away from the broken battlefield, the youth concludes that even if the man knows Cardenas' secrets, it changes nothing. Frontier scavengers who abandon honor are beneath his concern. A blonde young knight humiliates a hooded attacker, dismissing his bloodline and demanding to know how someone so unimpressive could claim noble ancestry. The hooded man lashes back in anger, trying to reassert dominance, and accusing the youth of insolence. The blonde knight calmly reveals he already knows the man came from Cruzes, catching him off guard before he can hide it. He follows that revelation with a swift magical strike that drops the hooded man before he can recover. As the attacker reels, the blonde knight explains that panic makes people overlook the obvious, exposing how easily the man was read. He identifies the man as one of the figures who unleashed the mana circuits, and demands a full confession before any punishment is decided. He recalls that Cruzes once dominated the continent, and treated the rest of the world as lesser lands. That supremacy ended when Cardenas rose and crushed the Cruzes kingdom with the help of the Dragon Knights. After that defeat, Cruzes was absorbed into the world, while Cardenas became the homeland of knights. Using that history, the blonde knight presses the captive to admit whether Cardenas was targeted out of resentment, and a desire to reclaim lost glory. He further guesses that the enemy sought the secrets of the Cardenas bloodline, and notes that this motive overlaps with his own interests. The captive answers that the real problem is larger. The experts who should have investigated the matter are already on the island. Realizing the danger, the blonde knight decides Sir Bradley must be informed immediately. He gathers blue energy into his sword, preparing a precise technique rather than a reckless attack. As he focuses, he identifies the true enemy as the Shadow Knights of Cruzes. He unleashes a controlled strike and judges from the result that most of the enemy are only imitators, not true masters. His blow kills the captive, and he concludes that the man had only a crude, incomplete version of the technique he was trying to reproduce. The blonde knight admits to himself that his own use of the art is still imitation as well. Even so, he decides his current level is enough for what he needs to do next. He confiscates the dead man's magical tools and documents, treating them as evidence. With cold efficiency, he hoists the corpse and leaves without sympathy. He heads off at once, moving to report what he has learned. Elsewhere on the island, a hidden camp of small tents sits concealed in the forest, hinting at a larger operation already in motion. At the academy, a few young knights briefly relax after recent upheaval, thinking they finally have time to rest. That calm breaks when one of them senses something strange and warns the others that trouble may be starting again. A blue flame-like signal appears before them, drawing their attention to a grim discovery. They find a hooded corpse marked by that energy, and one cadet urgently calls for Sir Bradley. Bradley arrives, immediately recognizing that the scene points to something serious. He identifies the killing method as Aura Blade, a combat technique only those who have reached the realm of a sword master can use in true battle. Seeing the body and the note left behind, Bradley concludes the written warning is genuine. The note reads like a guilty confession for attacks on the young people, confirming the enemy's involvement rather than denying it. It names the Shadow Knights of Cruzus and warns that many veterans on the island are already being lured toward the center by false emergency reports. Bradley realizes they may still stop the enemy before those forces fully gather, but the situation is already dangerously advanced. He orders an island-wide alarm and declares a state of emergency so everyone will move immediately. The warning spreads across the academy grounds without delay. Knights and trainees rush into motion, assembling as the emergency summons takes hold. Watching the mobilization, the blonde knight understands that Bradley has seen through his intentions as well. He joins the others as the academy shifts from routine to wartime readiness. Bradley addresses the gathered knights and makes clear that this is a real crisis, not a drill. He explains that there are invaders on Cardenas Island whose military strength is formidable. The enemy force includes 30 individuals stronger than the external power realm, with at least one who has reached the transcendent realm of sword mastery. To make the threat understood, Bradley compares that level of power to Commander Fabian of the Young Dragon Knights. He stresses that such monsters can devastate the land so completely that ordinary troop numbers become meaningless. Bradley gives the students a choice: flee through the space gate and wait for reinforcements, or remain and face the enemy. He forces the young knights of Cardenas to decide whether they will preserve themselves or stand their ground. The blonde knight privately thinks actual sword masters should be buying time for these cadets, and that no one should blame them for choosing to withdraw. But after a brief pause, he steps forward to answer for himself. He declares that he will fight. His resolve sparks the others, who vow not to go down easily and to prove what their training is worth. As the decision settles, the blonde knight reflects that choosing to stay in the face of mortal danger is what makes him feel like a true knight at last. A battle cry goes up as the order to fight is given. An army answers in formation, committing itself to the coming clash. A long-haired commander watches with quiet confidence, already in control of the situation. He agrees to honor the chosen course, but makes clear that support for a higher, transcendent objective must still be requested from Commander Prabin. Elsewhere, as dawn rises over the mountains, a new operation begins with a call for everyone to get ready. Someone sets out at once, moving with purpose toward a hidden destination. The blonde youth reaches an earthen pit he had dug near his quarters and realizes he must use this emergency cache sooner than expected. Inside, he finds the protected supplies he once stored there and decides to inspect the magical tools for anything still useful. Most of the equipment has failed, but an enchanted ring still responds, and he invokes haste. The spell surges through him, sharpening his body and driving him into immediate motion. He tests the ring more closely, confirming that the enchantment itself remains intact. From that, he deduces the real problem. His own heart is blocking outside mana, which is why the other magic tools no longer function. That leaves him with only the Shadow Knight's signaling device, which he knows how to operate thanks to what he learned from the 30th Shadow. He decides to use the signal either to draw the enemy in, or to mislead them if they discover him first. With that plan set, he sprints out, keeping one threat foremost in mind: the Sword Master. He steels himself with a vow that he will not let that enemy dictate the outcome. He races across the ravine at full speed, putting distance between himself and pursuit. As he runs, he sends a flare for reinforcements, and reasons that the enemy may hesitate to kill him if they still do not realize who he is. He resolves to crush the attackers in one blow, while they are still unsettled, and presses forward toward Lion's Ravine. At Lion's Ravine, the signal lands and marks the battlefield. A violent purple eruption tears through the ground, announcing a deadly ambush. The blast rips through hidden assailants, and one of them recognizes Cardenas with horror as men are cut down. The attacker is revealed to be a rank monster, a manticore, unleashed as a weapon against the ambushers. The beast emerges in full, its human-like face and mass of tail spines making clear how dangerous it is. Its attack detonates again, scattering blood and debris through the ravine. The surviving cloaked fighters are thrown into chaos as the manticore tears through their formation. In the confusion, they realize the monster is acting alone, and assume they only need to hold out until backup arrives. That confidence falters when another strike cuts in, and they begin to understand they are facing more than a simple distraction. The blonde youth crashes into them with lightning-charged blades, dropping several before they can recover. A survivor is stunned that he knows how to use that power at all. The youth reveals he baited information out of one of them already and mocks the weakness of their organization. Enraged, the remaining assassins rush him together, branding him contemptible. He stands his ground with twin swords and crackling energy, judging that their emotions have made them careless. One assassin lunges in a reckless attempt to finish him despite the danger. The charge ends in failure, and the attacker can only curse his own side's stupidity as blood floods the ground. The youth coldly reminds the survivors that they forgot the true threat they were fighting beside, the manticore. The monster steps forward again, now fully dominating the battlefield. It slams down another purple strike, forcing everyone to reckon with its power. The youth identifies it as a rank master manticore, a rare and terrifying creature with a lion's body and a human-like face. Remembering rumors that such monsters can mimic human speech, he directly asks it who it is. The beast turns to him, acknowledging the question instead of attacking at once. To his shock, it answers in a human voice and identifies him simply as a human. He is left reeling at the reality of a monster speaking human language. The manticore declares that if he wants to fight it, he should do so now, because it intends to die here regardless. Yet it adds that it will not die easily, and is only trying to buy enough time for someone else to arrive. The battlefield around them, littered with dead assassins, underscores the scale of the force it has already used. The youth connects its words to the assassin's leader, the one called the Fifth Shadow, and realizes that person may be the most dangerous figure on this island. Even a surviving assassin admits that against the Sword Master, he has no chance at his current level. The youth struggles to accept the warning, questioning whether he is really supposed to trust a monster's account. The manticore answers with a challenge. If he truly does not fear death, then he should come and face it. The blonde youth leaves under a warning that his nerve has been noted, but any mercy shown him will not be repeated. Before he can get far, the barren ground trembles under a new threat approaching. A monstrous creature erupts from below, and immediately brands him a foolish human. Instead of panicking, he recognizes the attack as exactly what he expected. He drops low and launches a prepared counterattack with blue energy gathered around his hand. His opening move is aimed straight at the monster's head. The blast slams into its face before it can finish taunting him. He keeps the pressure on in midair, driving through the creature's whipping limbs. His second strike is meant to destroy its lungs and cripple it from within. He follows with a third blow tied to earth itself, pushing his body past its limits because he cannot afford to lose. As he commits to the attack, the gem at his chest flares with light. That sudden glow sharpens his focus and makes him realize what the light is reacting to. He spots the true target nearby and abandons the monster to dive for the green pendant on the ground. At the same moment, a cloaked armored figure descends toward the same object. A surge of green power cuts through the space between them. The armored figure lands hard as the energy passes, forcing a brief separation. The pendant lies exposed for only an instant before a clawed gauntlet reaches for it. The cloaked knight snatches it up and reveals that this was the real prize all along, while the beast had only been a distraction. A hidden observer notices the theft and reacts at once. The knight senses another presence and demands to know who is there. Green magical currents spiral around the battlefield as the unseen force closes in. Using a boulder for cover, the blonde youth realizes he cannot stay hidden if the enemy can detect him from that far away. He decides he must move before the knight can pin down his position. As the search tightens, he thinks through the danger and concludes he needs distance before he can break out safely. The knight pauses, listening and testing the area for movement. When nothing appears, the knight wonders if the sensed presence was only imagination. Even so, the knight trusts that instinct, noting the mission is already straying from the original plan. Surrounded by planted swords, the knight honors fallen lives and declares their sacrifice was not meaningless. With the objective secured, the knight turns away from the battlefield. Elsewhere, the blonde youth bursts up from underground into a forest clearing. He emerges beside a fresh hole, having escaped the search by tunneling away. There he finds a gravely wounded knight and immediately asks what happened. The injured man weakly identifies him as an apprentice knight. Seeing the bodies around them, the blonde youth asks about the rest of the knights and learns a larger disaster has occurred. The sight of shackled hands makes the truth clear. The missing apprentice knights were captured. He recalls a line of bound youths being marched away, confirming they were taken alive. That memory hardens into certainty that the captives are already in enemy hands. He then confronts the key problem. The kidnappers somehow moved hostages through the area without being intercepted. Piecing it together, he concludes the enemy intends to secure test subjects and keep them alive for transport. From that, he narrows the method to a single likely answer. He identifies it as mass teleportation, a spell circle capable of moving many people to one destination at once. Realizing the enemy has already achieved its goal, he knows he has no time to waste. He reasons that moving so many people at once requires a huge ritual site, which makes the destination easier to predict. When he asks about Sir Bradley, the wounded knight says Bradley is still combing the region for the enemy. The blonde youth calmly tells the injured man to rest, while secretly preparing to act. He suddenly drives a blue energy strike into the man's body, cutting off any protest with pain. He reveals the wounded knight is actually Sir Bradley in disguise and that the deception has failed. As Bradley clutches him, the youth decides he cannot win this fight directly and must instead lure Bradley toward the enemy's destination. Bradley's presence becomes engulfed in ominous purple power as the confrontation turns into a race of manipulation. The next movement of the story shifts to a marching column advancing through the forest under a caped leader, carrying the captives toward their destination. In the burning forest, a surviving knight bitterly condemns the others for fleeing and abandoning their honor. A nearby man catches the disturbance and demands to know who has appeared. The green-cloaked knight drops into view before a wounded hooded figure and several captives, turning the confrontation into an open challenge. Recognizing the newcomer as a remnant of crews, the knight realizes this is no random survivor. The hooded blonde captive taker quietly sizes him up instead of panicking. He suddenly moves, choosing speed over direct confrontation. A barrier rises around the prisoners as he rushes past, making it clear he is drawing the knight away from them on purpose. He launches into the air and deliberately invites pursuit. The masked blonde man confirms his plan by glancing back to ensure the knight is following. He warns the knight that the captives will not be reclaimed so easily and keeps fleeing at full speed. As blades begin to manifest around him, he threads through the danger without slowing. He twists through the storm of summoned swords with practiced agility. The chase continues across the battlefield, his evasive movement proving he expected this kind of attack. He lands hard but uses the momentum to keep moving. Even the pursuing knight is forced to admit that a supposed remnant of crews should not be this fast. The fugitive decides that luring the knight this far is enough, and that his objective has been met. The knight dives in furiously, determined to cut him down for the insult. At the last moment, the knight senses something is wrong. He finds himself drawn far from the prisoners, while the blonde man lies seemingly downed and another hooded observer remains near the original site. The masked blonde man reveals the real threat has yet to appear, reframing the chase as a distraction. A new armored figure steps forward, confirming the trap is only now beginning. This newcomer mocks the knight for rushing ahead and notes that reaching this place was never the true goal. When accused of masterminding the chaos, he openly admits it is only the first step towards something much greater. The knight denounces the kidnapping of children and vows he will not let the culprit leave alive. The hooded mastermind laughs off the accusation and implies the entire island itself is part of his design. He activates a large-scale teleportation spell, and the battlefield begins to distort around them. The knight realizes too late that the enemy is attempting mass teleportation and tries to stop him. The mastermind reveals there are 15 minutes until full activation and declares he will personally hold the knight off until then. Green energy surges around the knight as the enemy engages him directly and dares him to struggle. The knight is caught off guard by the sudden magical assault and the scale of the enemy's power. Elsewhere, the blonde masked infiltrator tells Sir Bradley to endure a little longer while he moves into position. He commits himself to rescuing the captured knights before the larger plan can finish. A magic circle forms over the encampment, showing the teleportation ritual is spreading across the area. The infiltrator slips into the enemy camp and heads for the structure where prisoners are being held. Seeing most guards drawn away by the mastermind's presence, he realizes this is the opening he needed. Inside, he finds multiple bound knights seated under guard, including the blonde youth and Sir Bradley. Their restraints are magical, not ordinary chains. He cuts through the enchanted bindings with a blue energized blade. The shackles fall away, and the prisoners realize they have been freed. Confused, they question why someone linked to crews would help them. He refuses to explain, orders them to escape immediately, and keeps his focus on getting them out alive. The freed knights gather themselves, shaken but ready to move. The infiltrator quietly identifies with them as fellow knights despite the suspicion surrounding him. Understanding his intent, the rescued knights offer heartfelt gratitude. A sudden impact interrupts the moment, signaling that enemies have arrived. The infiltrator remains calm, deciding that with the hostages freed he can now fight without restraint. He turns coldly toward the remaining opponents, ready to settle the rest. He advances with twin blades as a hooded enemy faces him from the entrance. Blue energy erupts from his sword in a decisive strike. The attack tears through the hooded foe in one clean motion, beginning his counterattack against the camp. A hooded blonde fighter tears through lesser enemies in a burst of blue force, deciding it is time to clean out the battlefield. He drives the assault forward so brutally that one victim can only cry out before being overwhelmed. A sudden red slash cuts through the chaos, signaling a deadlier threat entering the fight. That threat strikes back with venomous green power, catching the blonde fighter in a violent counter. The armored assassin treats the clash like amusement and mocks the young swordsman for being only mildly entertaining. He declares the contest finished and boasts that no future swordsman will ever surpass his own mastery. Mid-boast, he senses a far more important presence approaching and realizes the one he has really been waiting for is finally here. Something descends from above, interrupting the duel and forcing attention skyward. The blonde fighter tracks the newcomer as a dark figure drops into the battlefield. Green energy erupts on impact, and the arrival lands with enough force to shake the ground and seize control of the scene. Recognizing the newcomer as the fifth shadow, the blonde fighter immediately understands who has intervened. The assassin is stunned that the hidden leader of their enemy organization has appeared in person, then coldly dismisses his fallen allies as expendable. Even so, he resolves to kill this famous opponent himself. A vast magic circle forms overhead as the new arrival surveys a field already littered with corpses. The scale of the slaughter becomes clear when the assassin steps among the dead without hesitation. He realizes the newcomer wiped out everyone else before reaching him. That realization turns into fury, and he charges to avenge his comrades. He attacks recklessly with poisoned blades, convinced his target will die if even one strike lands. The blonde fighter answers by manifesting a blade of blue energy, accepting that he must reveal more of his power to survive. He meets the rush head-on, unleashing his own force instead of retreating. The assassin is shaken that his opponent can create a mana blade at all, because it upends what he thought he understood. The blonde fighter refuses to explain himself, and keeps the focus on ending the fight. Their weapons collide in a rapid exchange as the assassin tries to break through with brute pressure. While parrying, the blonde fighter decides he has to finish this quickly before the battle drags into greater danger. The assassin pours even more green venomous energy into his weapon, trying to overwhelm him by force. But his rage makes him sloppy, and the blonde fighter sees that the assassin has lost composure. Using that opening, he shifts from defense to a moving counterattack while slipping past each strike. He commits to closing the distance, trusting his footwork to carry him through the barrage. Just as he thinks he has succeeded, the assassin reveals he anticipated the approach and claims to have trapped him. The trap is his ultimate poison, a lethal venom so potent that even a drop should be enough. He summons a giant spectral serpent, and boasts that its poison can invade any magic flow and stop a victim's heart within seconds. The blonde fighter brushes off the threat with mocking calm and keeps advancing. The serpent lunges with a concentrated mass of toxic power meant to finish him instantly. The poison swells into a deadly vortex around him, as if there is no way to escape its reach. When nothing happens, the assassin panics and realizes his poison is failing. The blonde fighter reveals that his heart wave can resist poison just as it resists magic, and reminds the assassin that he was never owed that secret. He uses the revelation as his opening and drives in with a decisive strike. The blow lands hard, forcing the assassin backward and breaking his momentum. For the first time, the assassin truly understands he may lose. In desperation, he unleashes a forest of giant venomous vines and serpents to crush the blonde fighter from every side. The attack tears across the battlefield, but the blonde fighter slips through the gaps instead of being pinned. Watching the wild assault, he judges that the assassin is no longer fighting cleanly and may be lashing out without control. He presses deeper into the writhing trap, getting close enough to end it at the source. He decides to break through the center with one direct charge. Blue power spirals around his blade, gathering into a focused cutting force. He bursts through and slices across the assassin, carving past the defenses in a single clean pass. Wounded and rattled, the assassin can only curse the boy he had mocked moments earlier. Black venom-like blood runs from his eye as the damage and backlash begin to show. Refusing to accept defeat, he vows to drag his enemy down with him even if it costs his own life. The battlefield erupts again as his monstrous vines surge outward for one last desperate attempt to consume everything. Watching the blonde boy force his mana past its limit, an observer realizes he is staking everything on one desperate chance. The boy commits and charges forward despite the strain on his body. As grasping vines close around him, he sees through the attack and recognizes it as a distraction. He cuts through the trap while keeping his focus on the real target ahead. By concentrating his aura into his blade, he turns wild swings into precise cuts that open a path. He keeps carving through the vines, forcing his way straight toward the enemy controlling them. Once the path clears, he spots the hooded opponent and realizes he can finally reach him. He lunges in for a direct strike before the enemy can retreat again. But his blade is stopped by a magical barrier, revealing the enemy had prepared for this too. Even so, the impact throws the hooded man off balance and exposes that he is armed with both sword and magic. Before the boy can press the advantage, the enemy's hand snaps out to seize control of the exchange. The hooded man catches him at close range and scolds him for fighting too recklessly. He reveals that he had been watching from the start and that, this close, the exhausted boy no longer has any chance of winning. Confident the fight is over, the enemy declares the boy's luck spent and prepares to finish him. A new voice cuts in and calmly denies that outcome. Dark energy lashes out from the newcomer before the hooded man can react. The red-caped commander turns, having intervened at exactly the critical moment. He descends into the battlefield and strikes from above, catching the hooded man off guard. The enemy is stunned that someone appeared without his noticing. The commander cuts him down and treats him as just another foe added to the many he has already slain. As the boy drops to one knee, the commander notes that the assassin had been so intent on killing him that he failed to sense a stronger threat approaching. The boy drives the point home, naming Commander Fabian as the one the assassin overlooked, leaving the enemy shaken by the impossibility of it. Fabian apologizes to Leonard for arriving late, making clear the blonde boy's name and that he was the one being protected. He praises Leonard's rapid growth since they last met, and Leonard gratefully credits him with saving Bradley as well. Another knight approaches as Fabian says he has questions, though the immediate danger seems contained. Leonard, battered and exhausted, asks to postpone any explanation until after he has slept. Fabian readily agrees and tells him to take the time he needs to rest. But the enemy has not given up, and his intent hardens again. He begins transforming his body with sinister green-black power, vowing to clean up what remains. The hooded man rises in a monstrous state and insists the battle is not over. Fabian answers with contempt, seeing the enemy's fixation as something warped and inhuman. He moves to end the fight immediately before the creature can do more harm. Yet in the same instant, the enemy slips past him and dives straight toward the kneeling Leonard. Fabian realizes too late that Leonard had been the true target from the very beginning. The assassin reveals his plan at last. If he cannot take Leonard alive, he will kill him instead. Leonard can only stare as the attack closes in faster than he can respond. A surge of blue power erupts between them and intercepts the killing blow. The battlefield is swallowed by that blue, watery magic as the attack is diverted. The assassin's transformed body begins to break apart, and he realizes he has been completely outplayed. With the danger past, Fabian condemns the enemy's willingness to resort to such a tactic, while noting that the teleportation magic used to snatch Leonard away remains a troubling unknown. Fabian admits he misread the situation and lowered his guard because he believed Leonard was the one under attack. The green-caped knight concludes that Leonard himself was always the intended objective. He reasons that the enemy saw Leonard as a threat great enough to make him betray his own beliefs. The scale of Leonard's growth is underscored by the memory of him already crossing blades with the master of the Transcendence realm. The green-caped knight says he has seen many prodigies among the young dragon knighthood, but never growth this extreme in so little time. He begins to suspect that Leonard may become a new legend in the Empire's history. Fabian agrees, believing Leonard's recent achievements have already surpassed what anyone expected of him. He resolves that Cardanus must find the boy no matter what, making Leonard's safety a priority. Elsewhere, Leonard lies adrift in blue water as if carried away by the same magic, while a final plea urges him to stay safe until they meet again. Unconscious and battered, Leonard floats in that strange refuge, only beginning to stir. A blond young man notices strange glowing figures drifting around the ship at night and realizes something is deeply off. As he wakes, the rocking beneath him and the smell of salt tell him he is aboard a vessel rather than where he last remembers being. His sharp red-eyed stare shows him forcing himself fully alert despite his injuries and confusion. A red-haired woman greets his awakening, making it clear she has been watching over him after rescuing him. She immediately presses him for answers, expecting gratitude and an explanation from the man whose life she saved. Introducing herself as Francis, captain of the Aquamarine, she takes control of the exchange and demands to know who he is. He accepts her offered hand, recognizing he has little choice but to cooperate. He identifies himself as Leonard, a man from the Arcadia Empire. Francis is stunned that someone from so far away ended up here and pushes to learn how he crossed such a distance. Leonard can only admit that his arrival was accidental. He recalls being caught in dangerous space magic before losing consciousness, with no memory of what happened after. Francis's dark-haired subordinate, Marion, connects that explanation to the famous Cardanus family and wonders if Leonard belongs to it. Studying his physique and training, Marion concludes that only a Cardanus heir would fit what she sees. Leonard confirms he is from Cardanus and starts to realize that his family name carries weight even across the sea. That recognition alarms Francis and Marion, who suspect his presence could bring trouble and decide they must proceed carefully. Their concern is interrupted when an urgent summons calls Francis to the wharf at once. A crewman reports that a gang of ruffians is causing trouble outside. The disturbance is led by Luciano Peterson, a swaggering thug who arrives with followers and open menace. Marion explains that Luciano deliberately chose the day of their meeting to target them, turning this into a calculated provocation. Francis tells Leonard to stay put and recover while she handles the problem herself. As she and Marion put on their coats and prepare to leave, they also arrange proper clothes for Leonard, treating him as a guest for now. Left behind, Leonard watches them go and weighs the strange turn his fate has taken. Before she leaves, he asks Francis the question that matters most to him: why she saved a stranger. She pauses, showing the question reaches her more than the earlier interrogation did. Francis answers that she could not ignore someone in need, revealing a stubborn moral code beneath her authority. Leonard silently absorbs that answer, measuring the kind of person she is. He decides her refusal to abandon him is exactly why she deserves his help, and he fixes on Francis as someone worth backing. At the bright harbor, the confrontation waits at the end of the pier. Francis and Marion approach Luciano together, meeting the threat directly instead of hiding from it. Luciano greets them with mocking familiarity, making clear he believes he controls this encounter. Francis refuses his false charm and treats his presence as an insult rather than a negotiation. Her contempt catches him off guard for a moment. Marion escalates by putting a blade to him and demanding to know why he dares harass them so openly. Francis recognizes him fully as Luciano Peterson, confirming this is no random street nuisance but a personal power play. Luciano brushes Marion aside and insists that only he and Francis matter here, trying to isolate the true decision-maker. He addresses Francis directly and demands she stop resisting and surrender the Aquamarine. Francis rejects him, saying the ship is a treasured family legacy and not something she will hand over for his convenience. Luciano counters that her father's death does not make everything his, revealing he is contesting her claim and trying to strip her authority. Francis stands firm and orders him to leave, making it clear the aquamarine is not for sale or surrender. Luciano drops the pretense of civility and warns that her refusal will only make things uglier. The threat turns real when one of Luciano's men is suddenly struck down in a burst of blood, proving someone else has entered the fight. Watching the chaos begin, Leonard calmly asks Francis if he may kill Luciano, as if the answer is already obvious. Francis is shaken by how casually he offers violence, and hurriedly asks him to spare Luciano's life even if he deals with the henchman. Luciano's side erupts in panic and rage as they realize an unseen attacker is cutting through them. Luciano himself is rattled, his confidence cracking as the danger closes in. Leonard appears in the fray and taunts Luciano's men for failing to protect their boss, turning their numbers into a humiliation. He unleashes a crescent of blue power, revealing that his strength is far beyond that of an ordinary castaway. The attack tears through the area in sweeping arcs, smashing apart the battlefield and scattering the enemy. Leonard follows through with precise sword force, his strike breaking through resistance without slowing. He finishes the exchange by slamming another thug down in a brutal blow, decisively seizing control of the fight. Two women arrive at the aftermath of a one-sided fight, immediately establishing control over the scene. The blonde woman realizes the swordsman defeated his enemies before she could even draw, and starts wondering whether this is the strength of Cardenas. Their stunned target is abruptly forced down, ending any thought of resistance. A blonde swordsman approaches the fallen man and calmly asks how they want to finish this. The two women pause, reassessing him now that his power is undeniable. He notices their hesitation and invites them to speak plainly. The blonde woman explains that, despite appearances, the beaten man is the son of Atlantis' highest authority. That revelation makes the situation far more politically dangerous than it first seemed. She clarifies that Atlantis is governed by the Union Council, which rules the Sea Nation. The man they subdued is Pablo L. Orlando Peterson, a figure tied directly to that ruling power. The swordsman learns Pablo is one of the top 5 members of the Council's son, and realizes he has stumbled into bigger trouble than expected. The blonde woman introduces herself as Francis. Without backing away, the swordsman offers to serve as her bodyguard for the time being. He adds that staying close to her will also help him gather the information he needs. With bodies scattered around them, Francis repeats the offer in disbelief, trying to process how quickly the alliance is forming. She accepts and reaches out to make it official. They shake hands and agree to work together, turning a chance encounter into a partnership. He gives his name as Leonard, and the introduction settles into mutual respect. As Pablo crawls nearby, Leonard asks what should be done with him and suggests locking him up somewhere. Francis decides sparing him is enough, noting that even his own father seems to have given up on him. Leonard is relieved to hear Pablo can survive as long as his limbs remain intact, which tells Francis his standards for mercy are unusually low. Francis steps forward, ready to move on from the incident. She tells Leonard to follow without worry because she has somewhere important to go, and he agrees to continue guarding her. Leonard accepts the role without hesitation. As they walk, Francis drops the formal distance, saying he can call her Fran if he is comfortable with it. Leonard tries the nickname, and Fran is unexpectedly flustered by hearing it aloud. Privately pleased by how natural it sounds, Fran decides this arrangement may turn out better than expected. Their route opens into Atlantis' spectacular water-wreathed cityscape. The three of them continue through the city, surrounded by grand displays of controlled seawater. Leonard admits he has never seen anything like Atlantis, not even in Arcadia. Fran explains that the city values appearance above all else, and that this showiness is exactly what draws so many adventurers. She leads him toward a towering destination and reveals they are heading to the place where adventuring parties are managed. Leonard learns the organization is the B007 Aquamarine Party. Fran verifies herself as Aquamarine's leader and confirms that Leonard's credentials have been accepted. She tells him Zephyrus Hall is a lounge reserved for B-rank adventurers and above. Leonard follows her inside, curious about what kind of group commands that level of status. They enter the hall together. Inside the lavish interior, Leonard realizes B-rank must represent a far more serious tier than he assumed. He concludes Aquamarine may be a much larger and more influential organization than he first thought. A staff member named Clara greets them and begins Leonard's registration for Zephyrus Hall. When told Leonard is joining, Clara updates the party count to 3, surprising him with how quickly he is being folded in. Clara asks Leonard to state his area of expertise so she can record the party's overall combat capability. Before he can answer, a drunken adventurer mocks him as nothing more than a decorative escort for the women. Leonard quietly asks Fran if she wants him dealt with, but she dismisses it as a routine nuisance. The drunk keeps provoking them, reducing Leonard to filler for a tiny 2-person party. Leonard moves first, seizing the man's hand before the heckling can escalate further. In one smooth motion, he twists into a strike and takes complete control of the confrontation. A blade of blue energy flashes out, turning the room's mood instantly serious. Leonard leaves the edge of his sword at the man's throat and calmly challenges him to judge his skill now. With the hall watching, Leonard's display forces everyone present to recognize that Aquamarine's new third member is no mere ornament. A new recruit eagerly confirms his background when asked where he comes from. He explains that he was born in a remote village in Arcadia and worries that staying silent about it could cause trouble later. As the registration wraps up, someone important approaches the group. The newcomer identifies himself as Leonard of the Kingdom of Kurugis and notes that his country is known only for swordsmanship rather than magic. His paperwork is stamped, officially completing his registration with Aquamarine. Fran excitedly celebrates that her party has gained a new member. Leonard notices Fran lingering and calls her back now that the process is finished. Fran briefly panics over having acted undignified in front of her new subordinate. She quickly regains her composure and formally acknowledges Leonard as an official member from now on. With the matter settled, Fran dismisses him for the day and suggests he look around the city. Leonard responds politely and says he looks forward to working with her. Before leaving, he hesitates, clearly wanting something more. He asks Fran for a favor. The scene shifts as that request leads him elsewhere. A woman answers the door to receive him. She recognizes him as Leonard and says Fran has already told her about him, inviting him inside. Leonard respectfully accepts her invitation. Inside, the mage Esther immediately points out that he does not look like a mage at all. She prepares to demonstrate something with magic. Using floating magical tools, Esther offers to teach him about magic from the beginning. Over tea, Leonard explains the real reason he came. Ever since he was swallowed by space magic, he has needed a way to counter it. He admits he knows almost nothing about magic and wants to understand it well enough to defend himself. Esther considers his situation carefully. She concludes that he is not trying to become a mage, but a magic swordsman. Esther says the best way to learn magic is to experience it directly, even if that method is hard for most people to accept. She explains that Aura users employ spirit stones to amplify mana and presents a specially prepared stone embedded with a magic circuit. Leonard insists he wants to use magic itself, so Esther begins forcing mana through the circuit to make his body feel it directly. The process overwhelms him immediately, but Esther warns that his unusual constitution makes this the fastest route. She presses on because, as Aquamarine's mage, guiding him is part of her duty. Esther frames the lesson as a necessary burden of her role and continues the experiment. Leonard strains in pain, shocked that something Esther expected to be easy is so difficult for him. Seeing his reaction, Esther realizes his body may truly be abnormal. The mana suddenly surges out of control and erupts from Leonard. The room fills with scattered blue magical energy as the burst spreads. Even the tea on the table ripples from the shock of the release. Esther notes that the intensity was unusual but sees the disturbance beginning to settle. Once the surge calms, she checks whether Leonard is still conscious and stable. He answers that he is fine, though still catching his breath. Inside him, his blood flow and mana circulation are shown to be intertwining in a way unlike normal magic use. Leonard reveals that during the ordeal he managed to reinterpret one of the spells engraved in the stone. When he identifies it as magic missile, Esther is stunned that he could grasp and alter even a basic spell so quickly. He demonstrates the result by launching the spell in a newly shaped form. Leonard explains that he found the original spell inefficient and reworked it into a sharp dagger-like attack instead. Esther is astonished that he not only changed a spell's structure but produced multiple copies at once. Realizing how extraordinary this is, Leonard asks whether Esther would let him study her magic circuits as well. He clarifies that he has no improper intentions and only wants to understand how her magic works. The story shifts to the Atlantis Magic Tower, suggesting a new setting and development. Inside the tower, papers suddenly scatter through a grand library-like hall. A man in blue stands amid the flying documents and books, clearly irritated by the disruption. He complains bitterly about being burdened with yet another hassle. The chief elder of the Atlantic Magic Tower, Jack Russell, introduces himself and immediately takes control of the meeting. When Leonard is presented, Jack makes it clear he already knows who Leonard is and questions why his own disciple would not. Jack demands an explanation for why outsiders have been allowed into this place, signaling that Esther must justify herself at once. Esther answers by reporting a breakthrough. She has finally reached the fifth circle. Jack is startled because she had been stalled for years, and he presses her to prove it. Instead of arguing, Esther demonstrates her progress with magic. She unleashes a compressed fireball, showing a level of control and force beyond her old limits. Esther explains that she learned to reshape fire magic by compressing and spinning it to maximize its power. She credits Leonard for repairing her circuits and advising her, while he warns that using such magic indoors is dangerous. The spell slips beyond Esther's control, confirming Leonard's concern. As the fire surges wildly, Esther admits she still cannot fully handle it, and is thrown off balance by her own power. Jack realizes Leonard has helped Esther touch a realm of transformation that should have been impossible for someone only at the fifth circle. Rather than panic, Jack calmly neutralizes the runaway magic and grows intrigued by what Leonard has accomplished. He concludes that Leonard has enabled Esther to transcend the usual limits of magic theory, something that should require true enlightenment. Leonard is told that what he did for Esther is a gift she could never repay in one lifetime. Jack approaches with the suspicion that Esther brought Leonard here precisely because she understood his value. Seeing an opportunity, Jack offers to take Leonard as his disciple, promising there is no greater chance for advancement. Leonard refuses immediately, saying he has already chosen his own path. Jack tries to sway him by arguing that Esther's future growth in magic depends on Leonard's knowledge and guidance. He sweetens the offer further by promising favorable ties with Leonard's guild, Aquamarine. Leonard declines politely but firmly, making clear he will not be drawn in. As Leonard leaves, Esther and Jack are left recognizing that a potentially powerful alliance has slipped away. Back at Bermuda Zephyrus Hall, Leonard reports in and the discussion turns to the guild's next move. Fran excitedly tells Leonard that his recent success has brought them remarkable luck, including contact with major magical organizations and the Union Council. Leonard cuts to the practical issue and asks about a list of names on the table. Fran explains these are people they want to recruit because the guild cannot expand its operations without more members. The need is urgent, since Aquamarine cannot even reach B rank without stronger personnel. Leonard agrees in principle that stronger recruits would improve the guild. Fran confirms that this is exactly the problem they are trying to solve. Before they can continue, an intruder crashes into the hall from above and violently interrupts the meeting. The attacker mocks the guild and demands to know where their leader is, treating the place like easy prey. Clara, a one-eyed archer from the guild, steps forward to confront the threat. She fires a spirit-infused arrow that pins the intruder's weapon and instantly shifts the balance. The ambusher is knocked off his momentum and reduced to panic by Clara's counterattack. Clara dismisses him as worthless, making it clear she is not intimidated. More hostile footsteps approach, revealing that the first attacker was only the beginning. A group of thugs surrounds Clara, belittling her and demanding that she stop resisting and hand over Santa Maria. Leonard decides the guild has been pushed far enough and steps in. He moves with sudden force, drawing a bow and releasing a technique fast enough to shock everyone present. His attack lands with spirit-like precision, freezing the confrontation and leaving the enemy stunned. Clara, shaken by what she just witnessed, asks who Leonard really is. Leonard identifies himself simply as someone from the Aquamarine party, downplaying the feat. Afterward, the others thank Clara for lending Leonard her bow, and they note that Leonard can handle archery as well. Clara, now impressed, admits joining them may not be such a bad deal and offers to work with the guild for the time being. Privately, she realizes Leonard's technique operates on a level beyond ordinary archery and resembles spirit arts, making her want to learn from him. The defeated men retreat in humiliation, while one of them tries to save face by boasting about the captain of Santa Maria. He claims their captain is no ordinary guild member but someone exceptional. A towering man suddenly appears and silences his subordinate with brutal authority. He introduces himself as Christopher Conrad, captain of the Santa Maria, and makes clear he has no patience for fools speaking in his place. Facing Leonard and the others, Christopher acknowledges that although he expected a weak B-rank guild, he may have underestimated them. Leonard judges the enemy leader as dangerously close to the transcendent realm, making him far too strong to confront head-on. He realizes a direct fight would put him at a severe disadvantage. Instead, he identifies Ninian's skill as an archer as the key to winning a naval battle. That thought pulls up a painful memory of the brute who once took Vivian from her. As children, Vivian reached for Ninian with innocent affection and called her big sister. Ninian tried to deny it because she was only a half-blood elf, but Vivian happily insisted they were sisters anyway. Ninian remembers that bond as precious, especially because Vivian's spiritual talent far surpassed her own. For a time Vivian was not just family but Ninian's closest companion, until that happiness was suddenly destroyed. The memory turns brutal as Vivian is cut down in front of her. Wounded and desperate, Ninian recalls the man mocking the idea that help from a distant elf settlement could ever arrive in time. He made it clear that no rescue was coming and that Vivian already belonged to him. When Ninian begged to trade herself for Vivian, he laughed off her plea as worthless. He rejected her as a mongrel and drove home how powerless she was. Even so, Ninian swore that one day she would become strong enough to never be helpless again. Back in the present, she acts on that vow by formally challenging Santa Maria to a duel. The challenge shocks everyone, especially when she declares that the loser must give up the exploration contract for Atlantis. Fran immediately objects that Ninian cannot make such a decision alone. But Fran is reminded that Santa Maria is trying to start a war, and stopping them matters more. She reframes the gamble as a chance to recruit both a gifted archer and a spiritist for their side. Leonard quietly asks Fran to trust him and let him handle it. After a moment of hesitation, Fran agrees and places her faith in Leonard. Leonard steps in physically and takes control of the confrontation. He faces Ninian and the others with calm confidence, drawing attention to himself. That only enrages the opposing captain, who grabs Leonard and demands to know if the boy really wants a duel. The captain presses harder, warning that elf spiritists are rare and asking what Leonard could possibly stake against one. Ninian answers for their side by offering the purchase rights to the Aquamarine, insisting even many spiritists together would not match her worth. Fran raises the stakes further by offering Santa Maria's Atlantis exploration rights in exchange, calling it a fair trade. The enemy leader recognizes just how serious and costly the wager has become. He accepts, but adds one condition: the duel must be against a member of Aquamarine. His pride refuses to let some noble girl hire a swordsman to fight in her place. Leonard immediately agrees that the duel will be one-on-one between the captain and himself, with no objections allowed. He goes even further and declares that he will settle everything in a single day. The decision leads them to the Atlantis Magic Tower, where the sheer scale of what Leonard has proposed leaves others stunned. Even so, Leonard steels himself and commits fully to the fight ahead. As they prepare, Fran explains that Conrad is not just a thug but the leader of an A-rank party and a magic swordsman. She admits Leonard's recklessness came from being fed up with Conrad, but that does not make the threat any smaller. The group concludes that even with Ninian and another B-rank fighter together, they still would not stand a chance against him. Ninian apologizes for dragging everyone into her personal grudge, but the others accept that there is no turning back and focus on what comes next. In response, Leonard reveals a hidden trump card by drawing power into his blade. Blue energy gathers around his sword, showing that he can form an aura blade. Fran is stunned by the revelation. The others realize Leonard had concealed strength far beyond what he had shown at the festival. Leonard confirms that, officially at least, he has never had a reason to reveal his true power until now. With that weapon in hand, he declares that he no longer sees any way he could lose to Conrad. Fran falls silent as the meaning of his confidence finally sinks in. Then her doubt breaks into joy, and she proudly affirms that trusting Leonard was the right choice. Leonard thanks her, while she reassures him that Conrad has not yet reached the level of a true sword master, making victory feel attainable. Ninian still worries that being a magic swordsman should require a specific counter, not just confidence. A new voice cuts in and tells her not to worry about that problem. A sharply dressed man arrives with a hooded companion and declares that no one in this country is more of a genius than Leonard. The scene opens in a formal chamber where a serious decision is about to be made. A woman and a bespectacled man acknowledge the situation and prepare to address a delicate request. The man confirms that they want him to serve as the witness for an important duel. Leonard and Esther explain that too much depends on the match, so they need someone trustworthy to ensure there is no foul play. The woman agrees easily, reminding him that he already owes Esther for saving her. But the man makes it clear he has no intention of pretending the contest will be honorable. Elsewhere, Conrad privately admits he expects the duel to be dirty. When Conrad arrives, a red-eyed superior receives him with familiarity and purpose. The superior is revealed to be Pablo, a high-ranking member of the Atlantis Union Council, attended by subordinates. Pablo sees the coming duel as the perfect chance to seize Aquamarine's power and influence. He orders Conrad to take a special medicine before the fight, promising it will temporarily raise him beyond the level of a sword master. Conrad dismisses the need for such help, convinced he can crush Leonard instantly without it. Pablo cuts off that pride and reminds Conrad this is an order, not a request. He insists the enemy must have prepared something, so they cannot afford to waste this opportunity. Conrad is told to secure the Aquamarine victory at any cost. He submits and vows he will not fail. That ruthless resolve carries forward as the duel approaches. On the day of the duel, the conflict becomes a public spectacle. The Bermuda Grand Auditorium presents itself as an event hall, but in truth it functions as an arena. Among the spectators, gamblers welcome the match as entertainment and immediately start talking about bets. Confidence in Conrad spreads through the crowd, with many treating his victory as a foregone conclusion. Rumors claim the challenger is just an unknown brat, and that the outcome has already been decided. The announcer introduces the fighters, Conrad for Santa Maria and Leonard for Aquamarine. With both men already facing each other, the announcer stresses how much is riding on the duel and how unusual it is to have a witness of such authority. That witness is revealed as Lord Jack Russell, Chief Elder of the Magic Tower. Jack's presence confirms that events are unfolding exactly as expected, and his role as Aquamarine's guarantor shocks onlookers. Earlier, the woman had questioned why Esther wanted her to take on that role. Esther explained that with Aquamarine's funds in danger, she could trust no one else to keep the duel from being manipulated. She also warned Leonard that the crowd would favor Conrad, since Leonard was still an unknown in the official records. Her allies agreed that almost no one would bet on Leonard. Leonard answered with confidence, trusting that the Magic Tower sword he borrowed would keep him from losing. The woman accepted that confidence and asked him to reveal whatever alternative plan he had prepared, and he agreed. Back in the arena, the signal is given and the duel begins. Conrad opens by taunting Leonard, framing the fight as a chance to legally kill him. Leonard refuses to be rattled and answers with calm contempt. That disdain enrages Conrad, who realizes Leonard still looks down on him. Conrad unleashes a fire-based circle spell, intending to burn Leonard to ash at once. A blazing sphere of magic expands across the arena. Leonard bursts through the flames instead of retreating, turning Conrad's opening attack into an opening of his own. Recognizing the spell as fifth circle magic, Leonard decides he can no longer hold back the power he borrowed from the Magic Tower. He channels magic into his sword, revealing it to be a top-grade artifact designed for magical infusion. With wind magic surging through the blade, Leonard cuts through the attack and drives forward. Conrad is stunned to realize his opponent is not just a swordsman but a magic swordsman as well. Leonard follows with a rapid, high-speed assault that forces Conrad onto the defensive. The exchange tears into the arena floor under the force of Leonard's strikes. Conrad is driven back through flying debris as Leonard keeps pressing the advantage. Leonard commits fully to the chase, refusing to let Conrad recover. But Conrad suddenly alters the battlefield with a dark, unnatural force underfoot. Using gravity magic, he traps Leonard's movement and boasts that no matter how fast Leonard is, he cannot escape gravity. Leonard strains against the crushing force as Conrad's counterattack begins to turn the fight. A blazing strike crashes into the arena, announcing the duel with overwhelming force. The bald veteran is caught off guard as the young swordsman closes in before he can recover. The youth opens with a brutal kick that snaps the man's head back and draws blood. He follows immediately with a downward sword blow, pressing the attack without hesitation. The older fighter reels, coughing blood as the sudden assault breaks his rhythm. Still, the blonde swordsman advances calmly with both blades ready, refusing to let the pressure drop. The veteran realizes too late that this is no ordinary mage and curses himself for underestimating a magic swordsman who can draw a blade so fast. Driven into a corner, he decides to rely on a hidden trump card. He activates it from inside his mouth, revealing he had prepared a secret weapon for this match. Dark power erupts around him, transforming his presence into something far more dangerous. With that power surging through him, he drops all restraint and openly declares his intent to kill. The young swordsman instantly judges the new strength to be on the level of a sword master and realizes the fight has changed. The veteran launches himself forward with explosive force, confirming the hidden weapon has massively boosted him. He rushes past the youth in a savage counterattack, turning the momentum in an instant. Blood spills as the younger fighter is cut, proving the veteran can now break through his defense. The older man's eyes blaze with murderous confidence as he senses victory within reach. He keeps up the assault from above, trying to finish the wounded boy before he can adapt. The blonde fighter pivots away and regains his footing, refusing to be overwhelmed. The veteran declares the match over, convinced the gap in power is now absolute. He swings a massive aura-forged blade upward, finally revealing the full shape of his enhanced technique. Instead of panicking, the youth recognizes it for what it is and understands his opponent is finally using his sword seriously. He answers by raising his own weapon and deciding to meet that power head-on. Blue energy gathers around his blade as he forms an aura blade of his own. He dives through the arena in a sweeping arc of blue force, matching the veteran's attack rather than avoiding it. Their clash shakes the ground, and the young swordsman drives straight through the exchange. The veteran is stunned that someone so young can wield an aura blade at all. His disbelief turns to panic as he realizes his advantage has vanished. A colossal blue manifestation engulfs the battlefield, and the veteran is utterly overwhelmed by the youth's superior technique. Watching from the sidelines, an official denounces the result as impossible and fraudulent. He tries to stop the match at once, insisting there is no way a magic swordsman could use an aura blade. But beneath his outrage is fear, because he knows the forbidden enhancement he arranged has been exposed and his own position is now in danger. A new voice cuts him off before he can keep talking. A high-ranking woman pointedly asks whether he is accusing the chief elder of the magic tower of failing to notice foul play. Faced with that implication, the official immediately backs down. Another observer notes that even the attempt to rig the match had been anticipated and recorded, leaving the man no room to escape responsibility. As the disgraced official stares at the ruined arena, the others turn to the next question of how to settle matters with Leonard. Meanwhile, the blonde victor stands over the aftermath with his sword in hand, having decisively won the duel. The story then shifts away from the arena to a ship at sea, marking the start of a new stage in their journey. A hand slaps down on a chart with good news. Their proposal has been approved. The group learns this means they can finally enter A-rank waters, though formal recognition as an A-rank clan still requires more conditions. They are reassured that the duel's prize money is so large that finances will not be a problem for a while. The orange-haired leader thanks Renard, and he answers with respectful loyalty. Before the moment can settle, hurried footsteps announce new arrivals. Two sisters approach Renard and thank him sincerely for saving them. One of them, Vivian, introduces herself as a wind spirit elementalist and admits she hardly knows how to repay him. Renard downplays it, saying their interests simply aligned, while the leader formally introduces herself and the clan. The sisters still worry they are receiving too much help and ask whether there is any way to repay the favor. The leader dismisses the distance between them and tells them that comrades do not need to keep score like that. She then has Marion take them to their rooms, keeping the atmosphere light with playful familiarity. That night on deck, the leader stands with Renard under the open sky as their voyage toward the next chapter continues. Fren asks whether everyone was dismissed early because of him, sensing she has arranged this private moment for a reason. She admits she has never told him why she wants to raise their clan to A rank, and prepares to reveal the motive. Fran realizes he already has some idea, even if she has not said it outright. Instead of answering immediately, she asks him to walk with her so she can explain properly. He agrees and invites her to speak freely as they leave together. Her explanation begins with a memory from 8 years earlier at the Union Council. Back then, the Council was debating whether to send forces into a dangerous Fifth Sea Zone where a massive rift had opened. Jord of Aquamarine warned that the threat resembled the demonic lands overseas and could become a source of otherworldly corruption. Another leader dismissed the concern, arguing that the rift was already under control. He insisted no new rift would appear for decades and praised Pablo's frontline judgment over anyone else's. Jord countered that such confidence meant nothing if something unforeseen occurred. Pablo pushed for action anyway, tempted by the chance to harvest valuable otherworldly byproducts from the danger zone. Jord's anger sharpened as he heard greed outweigh caution. Pablo pressed him aggressively, demanding to know why he opposed the plan so fiercely. Jord reminded him that those byproducts were the foundation of Atlantis' prosperity, making the council too dependent on reckless risk, then called for the other's judgment. The room fell into a telling silence, and Jord understood he had been outvoted. Accepting the council's choice, he withdrew his hand and acknowledged that the decision had been made. Even so, his frustration boiled over as he clenched his fist. He condemned the council for letting greed blind them to the danger. Realizing Aquamarine could no longer rely on the other A-rank clans, he ordered his own people to sail at once. Aquamarine committed itself to sealing the last rift alone. His crew answered immediately and launched the ship into action. Using magic and the ship's systems, they drove forward with overwhelming force. The vessel surged into the Rift Sea as Aquamarine's operation began in earnest. Their power tore across the battlefield in a brilliant arc. Jord fought through monstrous resistance and, despite the corruption spreading from the rift, led the effort that finally sealed it. When others called for him to return, he stayed long enough to reduce the number of remaining rifts as much as possible. Back in the city, people complained that he cared more about adventurers than his official duties, but he ignored them. He declared he would not come back until he had sealed the giant rift called Charybdis, shocking those around him. He remained unmoved by their alarm. His answer was simple. That was exactly why Aquamarine had to be the one to go. So Aquamarine sailed straight toward the colossal red rift. The sea itself trembled beneath the ship as they advanced. Returning to the present, Fran explains that nothing had gone wrong in that mission because Aquamarine had truly been extraordinary. Remembering it still leaves her subdued, as if the cost of that strength has never left her. Fran repeats that they were genuinely powerful, confirming the impression the story leaves on him. In the flashback, after the battle seemed over, the crew finally believed they could go home. Jord noted that the delay would worsen the spread of land corruption, but at least they were returning alive. He also knew the council would blame him for the time it had taken, and accepted that burden. He tried to lighten the mood by asking Fran to agree that everyone would be angry with him, drawing his family into the moment. His daughter happily asks if they are finally going home, and her mother stands beside her with quiet relief. That peace is shattered when a violent explosion erupts against the ship. The crew recognizes the attacker at once, the Moby Dick. Jord is stunned into wondering whether Pablo had planned this betrayal from the beginning. Fran, still a child, looks to her father in confusion as her mother realizes the danger. Jord orders Marion to protect Fran and commands the crew to make for the docks at full speed. He believes that if they can just reach port, their enemies will not dare continue such an open attack. As the ship races for safety, he prepares to intercept the enemy vessel himself. Pablo reveals the true aim of the ambush: to crush Aquamarine's will to resist, even if it means throwing everything away for his pride. Enraged by the treachery, Jord draws his weapon and charges into the fight. A young man swears that Aquamarine's honor and will must survive, even at the cost of his life. As danger closes in around him and the orange-haired girl, he clings to that resolve instead of giving in. The moment erupts into a violent blast, forcing the scene into chaos. A blue-eyed observer takes in the aftermath with sudden focus. Later, aboard a ship at night, the blonde swordsman reflects that the stakes are too high for him to quit now. His pink-haired companion warns that opposing Atlantis directly is far more serious than expected and gives him a chance to walk away. He refuses without hesitation. To him, facing strong opponents is exactly the kind of path he wants, especially if it serves a worthy cause. He adds that enemies who are truly vile deserve no mercy from him. The woman is briefly left speechless by how firmly he means it. Then her tension breaks into delighted admiration, and she openly praises him. Encouraged, she invites him to formally join Aquamarine and stand with them. He accepts and commits himself to Fran's side. By daylight, their alliance moves from words to action aboard the ship. The blonde recruit begins training in earnest, moving through sword drills with controlled speed. His focus sharpens as he reads the flow of the exercise. A silver-haired teammate launches in aggressively, testing his reactions from range. At the same time, the dark-haired fighter presses from another angle, forcing him to handle both attacks together. He answers with a clean countercut that breaks their momentum. The exchange ends with him holding the center while both partners are checked, and the drill is called there. The dark-haired woman realizes their teamwork will be crucial for the journey ahead. The silver-haired girl notes that their coordination is steadily taking shape. Before they can continue, a visitor arrives, having come specifically to see this rising group. The man introduces himself as Benjamin of the Bermuda A-Rank Hall and reveals he watched their match because of rumors that the blonde fighter defeated two notable A-Rankers. He admits that overcoming both Marion and Ninian at once is impressive even by his standards. But he points out a problem. Despite their talent and spirit, Aquamarine is still only a 4-person A-rank party. Fran understands immediately that their real weakness is numbers. Benjamin confirms they have enough strength for the rank but not enough members to operate officially, so they ask how many more they need. His answer is simple: 2. If they recruit 2 more people, he can promote them to full A-rank status at once. With that goal in mind, the search for new members begins in town. The blonde swordsman and a cloaked companion discuss how hard it is to find anyone suited to a party this unusual, though he thinks he may have spotted a possibility. Something nearby catches his attention and confirms his instinct. A local gang blocks their path and warns them they have wandered into dangerous territory. The thugs make it clear this street belongs to Galano and that outsiders, especially youngsters, are not welcome. Their leader escalates the threat, promising violence even if the pair leaves now. The blonde fighter moves first, slipping inside the threat and striking before the thug can capitalize. He makes it clear he had no intention of fighting, but once weapons were drawn, standing still was no longer an option. With a casual blow, he sends the first attacker flying and shows the gap in skill immediately. The thug crashes away in pain, utterly overmatched. That disturbance draws the attention of a larger, more dangerous man nearby. The newcomer enters the fray with explosive force. He attacks so suddenly that the blonde swordsman is forced into the air to avoid being crushed. Even then, the heavy strike nearly catches him from below. He realizes at once that this opponent is far faster and heavier than the street rabble. The man reveals another layer of danger by whipping chains around his polearm, turning it into a far more unpredictable weapon. He uses that chained weapon to control the space and drive the blonde fighter back mid-movement. Confident and battle-hardened, the veteran boasts that someone who fights for survival every day will not be troubled by a mere child. He sweeps the chained blade in a wide arc, forcing the blonde swordsman down while the cloaked companion watches the opening exchange. From the ground, the blonde fighter answers coolly that he had just reached the same conclusion about his opponent. Francis is stunned to realize the man before her is Galano. Galano recognizes Francis in turn and is surprised that the child he once knew has grown into an adult. Her blonde companion confirms that this is the wailing Galano they have been searching for. Caught off guard, Galano asks why they suddenly came looking for him. Francis explains that she intends to restore Aquamarine and needs Galano's help to do it. She invokes Dentuso of the Storm, saying that as his brother Galano has the strength to help bring back Aquamarine's legendary hero. Francis pleads with him to join them, believing his abilities could quickly return their nation to glory. Galano refuses immediately and tells Francis to go home. As he turns away, he reminds her that Aquamarine once made enemies of both Moby Dick and Atlantis. He argues that if even his brother could not overcome that burden, there is no reason to expect him to succeed. Galano declares that he is finished following a path that leads nowhere. He leaves Francis with a warning to abandon her stubborn dream and speak of something better if they ever meet again. Francis realizes persuasion has failed, but her companion asks her to wait. She is startled as he decides to take matters into his own hands. Before she can stop him, the blonde swordsman lunges forward. He launches himself straight at Galano from above, forcing the encounter into combat. Galano whirls around in shock, demanding to know what the young man thinks he is doing. He reacts instantly, swinging his spear to intercept the charge. The blonde fighter insists that if words cannot move Galano, a fight might. He crashes through the warehouse space with enough force to blow past the men around Galano. The impact tears through the interior and leaves the area shaking with debris and dust. When the dust begins to settle, the young man advances calmly instead of retreating. He throws Galano's own words back at him, saying a man who claims his path has no future should at least be able to face the front of it. Knocked down but not broken, Galano rises in anger and curses him. Still trying to understand the provocation, Galano demands an explanation. The blonde fighter answers that this confrontation is exactly what Galano needed to accept. He promises to prove it through the duel itself. Assessing the situation, he admits his spearmanship is inferior to his swordsmanship, but decides it is enough to draw out Galano's true self. He recognizes that when it comes to rank and experience, Galano is the genuine article. Galano accepts the challenge with lethal seriousness and warns that choosing a spear means choosing death. Their weapons collide with explosive force as the duel truly begins. Galano's spearhead whips through the air in a vicious, precise arc. The blonde fighter meets the assault head-on, matching Galano's chained spear with agile movement. Galano realizes his opponent is reading his attacks. The younger man breaks through Galano's rhythm and lands a hard kick that sends him reeling. Without gloating, he praises Galano's skill and implies that such mastery could only come from relentless training. He keeps pressing, battering Galano with a sequence of controlled strikes. Galano explodes in frustration and surges forward with brute force. As he attacks, he reveals the source of his obsession. His brother and master was the one who taught him everything. That admission jolts him, as if he has spoken a truth he had been refusing to face. In that opening, a remembered lesson surfaces, criticizing his shallow thrust and poor follow-through. The blonde fighter recalls the proper technique. Keep the grip half open and release power only at the instant of rotation. He adjusts his hand exactly as taught, preparing a refined counter. With a sudden rotational burst, he unleashes a rising strike powerful enough to tear up the ground between them. Galano is left staring in shock as the technique lands. The cracked earth and the distance forced between them make clear that the duel has shifted decisively. Galano finally understands what he has been shown. For the first time in a long while, he feels as though time in his life has started moving again. His anger gives way to gratitude, and he asks the young man to teach him more through this duel. The blonde fighter accepts, and the clash becomes the beginning of Galano's return rather than another refusal. A fierce sparring match ends with the blonde youth pressing the attack while the battered veteran, Galeno, refuses to back down and relishes the challenge. By morning, the confrontation has given way to a calmer moment at Aquamarine's industrial base. Galeno and the blonde fighter walk together, their bruises showing that the clash has already turned into mutual respect. Someone calls out to Galeno, interrupting their return. The guild leader greets him with relief, noting that he seems to be in far better spirits than before. Galeno admits the beating helped clear his head, and the blonde youth stays close at his side. Leonard openly praises the boy's talent, predicting he may one day surpass his older brother. The compliment surprises the guild leader, who jokes that men seem to bond through fighting. Galeno confirms it, explaining that he genuinely enjoyed the exchange. With the mood settled, the guild leader asks him once more to reconsider her earlier offer. She reminds Galeno that her father once brought dentists into their side and now wants Galeno to join Aquamarine as well. She formally invites him into the party, extending her hand in earnest. Galeno accepts the gesture but makes clear he cannot simply agree on the spot. Instead, B-rank adventurer Galeno of the Whaling swears himself to the sea and promises to stand firm through any storm. Leonard sees the result as progress, believing Aquamarine has moved one step closer to reaching A rank. As they leave together, the guild leader decides they should recruit at least one more capable ally if possible. Elsewhere, new visitors arrive indoors, their footsteps signaling an unexpected meeting. Chief Elder Russell and Esther appear at Aquamarine's headquarters, surprising the household with an unannounced visit. The guild leader is startled to see them both there. She and Leonard quickly asked what urgent matter brought them in person. Russell explains he heard Aquamarine is trying to raise its rank by exploring rifts. Because rifts are his main field of study, he says his research depends on obtaining many specimens, which adventuring parties usually provide. But those supplies have recently dried up, and Leonard immediately suspects the Union Council is behind it. Russell agrees, believing the Council is manipulating prices and deliberately restricting rift byproducts for its own advantage. That leads Aquamarine to ask what exactly he wants from them. Russell answers with sudden confidence, ready to make a proposal. He offers to accompany their expeditions as a researcher, promising that with him they could gain far more than ordinary byproducts. The guild leader welcomes the idea but hesitates, unsure whether he truly means to put himself in danger. Russell clarifies that he would not join as a combat crew member but as a guest researcher attached to the expedition. Esther backs him up, arguing that his strength and cooperation would make him a major asset when it matters. Faced with the group's support, Benjamin is pressed to give a practical judgment rather than an emotional refusal. He concedes there is no doubt about Russell's combat ability, though he worries about the risk of taking the chief elder into a rift. Even so, he hands over a list of currently available rifts, and the guild leader gratefully accepts it. Eager to move forward, she asks if they can depart for one of those rifts immediately. Benjamin agrees without further delay. Russell and Esther send Aquamarine off with their blessing as the mission is set. Soon their ship cuts across the sea toward the chosen destination. Under clear skies, the vessel advances steadily over open water. Aboard ship, a crewman complains that they set sail before he even had time to greet everyone properly. The guild leader teases him for still being as impatient as ever, though she wonders if she may have rushed things too much. He reassures her that her directness suits her, and that he is genuinely glad to see Galeno again. Confident that Galeno's return will shock the others, he shoulders his weapon and looks ahead to the mission. He then asks where they are headed, wanting the destination explained at last. Leonard reads from the briefing and identifies the target as a spatial scale rift with difficulty rated B. He adds that the danger level is slightly higher, at B+. The rift lies in the 5th sea area and is known as the Sea Orc's lair. Inside, savage sea orcs roar in the darkness, revealing the brutal enemies waiting for Aquamarine.